Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Board of Ed meeting. I know we have a couple of hundred people on this call or our meeting tonight, so good evening. I will call the meeting to order. Donna, roll call.
Mrs. Penna. Mr. D'Aquila.
Here.
Mr. Joya.
Here.
Ms. Riley.
Here.
Mr. Cassano.
Here.
Dr. Crisanino.
Here.
Mrs. Kirsch. Mr. Reinstein.
Here. On December 18th, 2020, this body by resolution adopted the schedule for this meeting with time and date, or actually set for provided to all school boards, all schools, all PTO president, all PTA president, and posting at the administration building. On the same day, a copy was emailed to public libraries, into Courier News, and filed with the municipal clerk to file involved. The meeting will also be was announced on the district sign at Columbia. Could I have everybody please stand for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic,
for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Donna, correspondence.
There was two pieces of correspondence for tonight's meeting. We have an email from Mr. Dan McGovern regarding staff quarantining prior to winter break, and an email from Mr. Leblanc regarding the COVID dashboard.
Thank you. Dr. Brawley, superintendent's report this evening.
Good evening, everyone. While the purpose of tonight's board meeting is the timetable for the return to in-person learning in January, I would be remiss not to address the recent Instagram post and subsequent posts and the change.org petition that it generated, which has received over 1,500 signatures. I, like many of you, was deeply saddened to read the Instagram post from students past and present that detailed a culture of hatred and bias in Berkeley Heights Public School that targeted students for abuse because of their race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender. This is against everything I believe in, not only as an educator, but as a person. From the post that we can determine who the individual is who posted them, the building principals and I have launched investigations into the claims to determine how we can hold those involved accountable and provide support to those students. I encourage anyone who has a formal complaint to file it officially or through the anonymous reporting system so that we can investigate it accordingly. However, I do disagree with one statement in the petition that states that the district, and I quote, has shown no sign of doing anything regarding the discrimination students face. While I cannot speak to what was done in the past, I think that it is very important to set this record straight as to the actions the district has taken during my tenure over the past year and a half. I was appointed the superintendent of Berkeley Heights Public Schools in July of 2019, and over the course of the summer and first semester began evaluating the district. As part of that process, and after meeting with parents who expressed concerns regarding the treatment of students of color at GL in January of 2020, I tasked a group of administrators and teachers to start holding roundtable discussions with students, hoping to begin an open conversation regarding bias, targeting, climate, and culture at GL. There were 2 follow-up roundtables in the spring with students at GL and at CMS. In the spring of 2020, I rebranded the district mission as Include, Inspire, and Empower, with the first and most important of these being to include, to make sure that all students felt safe and included when they came to school. These are not simple words. They strike at the heart of everything that the district does, and I have committed significant resources in a multifaceted approach to make this a reality. I have also made it one of my personal merit goals for the district, as has the administrative team. Over the summer of 2020, a survey was provided to students and staff regarding diversity and social and emotional awareness and needs. Based on the quantitative and qualitative results of both surveys, the school district initiated a world-renowned expert in multicultural awareness and the founder of AdColor, Mark Shashan, who presented to the entire district staff and provided a follow-up training for administration. This specific training and survey results guided the building and district level diversity and inclusion committees. Additionally, over the summer of 2020, as the district created an educational program for the 2021 school year, in the face of the pandemic, we also created diversity committees at each grade band, as well as one at the district level. Each committee is composed of teachers, parents, Board of Education members, and students where applicable. These committees have honest and open conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues in the buildings, coordinate activities, discuss curriculum and instruction, and celebrate our diversity. Underneath these committees are individual action teams that are taking on special activities related to diversity and inclusion. All of these people have committed a great deal of time and energy to making our schools a more inclusive place. Curricularly, we are adding a course on race at Governor Livingston High School. Our elementary schools are currently working on an LGBTQ+ curriculum that starts at 5th grade, and we are evaluating all curriculum as to make diversity an integral part of our instructional areas. And finally, we are working to make our special education students feel more included in the regular school day. The district has also committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion training for the staff. At the start of the school year, the teaching staff received implicit bias training, and elementary principals have attended additional bias training. At GL, Mr. Nixon is partnering with a teacher to devote February to anti-bias workshops for our staff, and he has met with the Student Advisory Council to work on a handbook for biased incidents that will also affect those members of the staff who exhibit biased behaviors. The Board of Education has a policy number 3211, which explicitly denounces bias interactions as a part of our teaching staff, and any incidents are thoroughly investigated. As we understand that students may be reticent in coming forward, Mr. Nixon has also repeatedly distributed the anonymous reporting link to the student population so that they may report any incidents within the building without fear of repercussion. And finally, because we know that the schools do not exist in a vacuum, we have partnered with the Berkeley Heights Township Diversity Council and participated in several listening sessions. We look forward to continue working with them to make the town a better place. We are also working with them in their community Martin Luther King Jr. Day event. All of the above would normally take multiple years to get off the ground and in place. That it was done in the past year, with much of the time while navigating the global pandemic, is an incredible accomplishment and is a testament to the dedication and professionalism of our administrative team and teachers, and the support and hard work of the Board of Education, the community, and our students. While I'm proud of what has been accomplished, by no means am I satisfied. There is still much for us to do. To create change within a school district, it takes 4 things. 1, change of hiring practices. We have partnered with Teachers College of Columbia as well as Central Jersey Pride to diversify our teaching staff. 2, professional development. 3, strict accountability. And 4, time. As frustrating as it might be, it takes time to change a culture that has been fostered for years, but we are committed to it. And with your help, we hope to make Berkeley Heights Public Schools a place that truly includes, inspires, and empowers all of its students. I am now going to turn this over to Mr. Nixon so that he may talk about the work he has been doing with the Student Advisory Council.
Thank you, Dr. Barley, members of the Board of Education. Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Nixon, and I'm the principal of Governor Livingston High School. And I'm joined tonight by Senior Matthew Chitt. Matthew has been a member of the Student Advisory Committee during his time at the high school. He'll help me share more about a specific project that we've been working on just a little bit. Thank you for being with us tonight, Matthew. I'd like to start by sharing that I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak this evening. This has been a challenging school year at best, certainly more so for some. It is upsetting for me as a principal who cares deeply about our students and staff to hear about the negative experiences of students, both past and present. This is not at all how students at GLHS should feel or be treated. Our belief has been that all students should feel happy, safe, and welcomed at school. Those ideals are why we make it a priority to greet students as they enter the building each morning, and also why we've created a wellness center complete with programming for our students. I'm a father of a 6th and 5th grade student, and every day, before I even think about their academics, I hope for them to be both happy and safe at school. I want the same for all of your students here. With that in mind, we recognize the need to do more, and our work is ongoing. As I shared with our staff and students on Friday, we need to work together as a school community and share in the responsibility of ending hate. I've had a lot of meaningful conversations with students, parents, and colleagues over the past year, all with the same goal, to make things better. I've engaged the administrative team in this process. We are working diligently to be supportive leaders and active partners in the process of change as we work to find solutions. Our goal is simple, while the challenge is great. We must listen, reflect, improve, and be relentless in the process of providing our students with the safest possible environment while at school. I believe we have made important strides both recently as well as over the past few years, while being well aware that change doesn't happen overnight. One of the challenges about many of these initiatives is that they're not always visible to the public. And to that end, I'm looking forward to sharing some of those specific items with you tonight. The Governor Livingston Diversity Committee, which is led by Ms. Lori Scott and Mr. Stephen Hopkins, is working hard to foster inclusiveness and acceptance through celebration, communication, and education. We meet monthly with representative students, staff, and community members to develop and work on action items related to those topics. Student organizations such as Saga, GL Unfiltered, formerly the Student Activism Club, and the Understanding Asian Cultures Club, to name a few, have been created and supported over the past few years. They are all extremely active with their diversity initiatives. One such example is the Sexuality and Gender Acceptance Club's Safe Zone Training Program. Student representatives presented at a faculty meeting last year regarding a training program that they wanted to offer in order to educate staff members. In addition, club members provided lunch and learn workshops to staff members to learn more about inclusive language and activities while providing that safe zone training. We have approved 2 new courses, like Dr. Varley mentioned, that will be added to the curriculum next year. In the Social Studies Department, a course titled Race and America in the 21st Century was designed to help students understand and critically evaluate the impacts of the social construction of race through the lens of events of the 21st century. In English, an elective course titled Roots in Rhythm will offer the opportunity for students to learn about the history of ancient African civilizations and Pan-African cultures through the study of rap and hip hop music. The school safety team meets on a monthly basis with a specific focus on diversity. And we're also developing plans to provide both staff and student training sessions on diversity that we're targeting to roll out in February. Although all of what I'm sharing right now is visible public actions that are now being taken, it is important to note that the staff and administration at GL has always addressed known incidents prior to the inception of the aforementioned items. Due to student privacy, what has been done to address and educate specific students that have demonstrated or been involved in the activities of hate cannot be shared publicly or even with other parties involved. However, we can note that specific training modules on different aspects of diversity or hate have been used in order to educate students that have been found to be involved in negative activities. If ignorance, racism, and discrimination is a learned behavior, then it's up to our educational institutions to work together to educate and teach our students and the entire community to be inclusive and accepting of differences. While all of this is just a start and much work still needs to be done, I believe we are moving in the right direction as a school community. At this time, I'd like to invite Matthew into the conversation regarding a project we initiated in November. Matthew and the other members of the Student Advisory Committee have accepted the challenge of engaging in a revision to our student handbook that he will share more with you about. Matthew?
Thanks, Mr. Nixon. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Chen, and I'm currently a senior at GL. I'm the Student Council Executive Board President and captain of the soccer and lacrosse teams. I've also been a member of the GL Student Advisory Board for 4 years now. Now, the role of the Student Advisory Board is to represent the student body to the administration, and during our monthly meetings, we often discuss important issues within the school and work to create solutions. For example, when GL went all remote last spring, we contributed ideas as to how our schedule should be structured and discussed how our classes were being adapted to our new learning environment. Our most recent project began in November when Mr. Nixon and the administration asked us to help them draft an update to our student handbook in order to address instances of racism and bias within GL that gained further attention because of a recent Instagram post. Last month, we were given the opportunity to suggest how the administration should go about constructing the update, and just this Friday, we were able to read the first draft and give feedback. We ensured that the update contained provisions specifically addressing incidents that occur online and on social media, where so many believe they can hide behind their screens and say whatever they want with impunity. We plan to share the update with the GL Diversity Committee in January and officially add the changes to the student handbook at the beginning of the second semester. And now that you know what the administration and the Student Advisory Board have been doing to combat instances of bias in the school, I'd like to share my personal thoughts on the issue as a student. In my 4 years at GL, I've seen that some students simply aren't tolerant towards the beliefs of others and aren't empathetic towards their classmates. Having said that, I personally know that most students truly are caring people and probably weren't even aware that intolerance is such a large issue at the school they attend every day. Therefore, I think the administration is taking an important step in acknowledging that bias, racism, homophobia, and sexism are far more prevalent than any of us would like to believe. And by outlining a clear procedure for dealing with those incidents, I think that the administration is moving in a positive direction. However, I'd certainly be lying if I said that a handbook update or simple policy changes were going to put an end to that type of behavior. The fact of the matter is that some students who enter GL have preconceived notions about things like race and gender identity that are extremely difficult to change, and in fact are only further reinforced by a general culture of intolerance that exists in our school and in our town. Instead of just defining expectations for students who aren't understanding of others, I'd like to think that as a school district and as a community, we can work towards making sure all of our students are empathetic and caring individuals who don't need to be reminded to behave by an update to the student handbook. Whether that comes from beginning to educate students about things like implicit bias and gender identity in elementary or middle school, or maybe from a broader shift towards a more tolerant culture in our schools and in our community, I'm not sure. And maybe I'm coming across as an overly idealistic 17-year-old who's about to go to college and still naively hopes he could change the world for the better. But I think that instead of only focusing on policy updates, we need to additionally ensure that our students learn to respect others without being told. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. So in closing, I'd like to share a reminder that I included as part of my email to our students on Friday. I want to remind our students that GL staff and administration are here to support you. Please let us know how we can help. Reach out to a trusted teacher, counselor, or administrator. If you don't feel comfortable reporting something to us, please feel free to report it using the Hipster anonymous reporting system that was linked in the email. By working together and being kind to each other, we can all do our part to make GL a more inclusive place for all. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon and Matthew. I truly appreciate your time tonight coming to speak to our public as well as myself and the Board of Education. I'm going to move really quickly to the original purpose of this meeting, which is our return to learning in January. And I'm going to share my screen for a very short and quick presentation. Let's see, we've got it. One second. So if you look at our percentage of remote students, for some reason I cannot make it present. Okay, I'm just going to do it this way. There we go. Okay. If you look at our percentage of remote students, which has, our percentage of remote students, which has gone down in most of our buildings, except for if you look at Mary Kim McMillan, it stayed the same. Mountain Park, it has gone down. Hughes, Woodruff, also decreased. And then in CMS, our number of remote students has increased by 5%. And then if you look at the numbers of students who have increased at GL, we're up now to 53% of our student population who are remote. So I think on Friday, we had 169 children in GL at one time. In multiple conversations with the Board of Education and with the administrative team, I came to a decision. Right now, we have approximately 12 teachers who are currently out due to childcare issues, health issues, etc., across the district. We have 6 teachers at GL who are teaching remotely due to the fact that we cannot find someone to replace them. And then on top of that, with the amount of teachers who come in contact with someone with COVID-19 and the amount of teachers who are traveling over the holiday break, we are stretched thin with our teaching population. On Friday, we had 21 classes that were not covered by substitutes. So if we look at what we had on Friday, when we did have the majority of our teachers in the building who have not traveled, we know that starting in January, we will have an issue. The CDC has changed the guidelines to 10 days quarantining from traveling as opposed to 14 days. So that helps us only have 1 week of remote learning for pre-K to 8th grade. If you look at the recommendations for January 4th through the 8th would be remote for the entire district. And then moving January 11th through the 15th, we would have the current schedule for pre-K and kindergarten due to the fact that pre-K and kindergarten overlap in hours. We cannot do a plan A for pre-K and kindergarten other than the full day kindergarten. And 1st through 5th grade would move to plan A on January 11th. And grades 6 through 8 would move to the hybrid plan B on January 11th. And then grades 9 through 12 would stay remote until January 5th. And our reasoning behind the high school being remote until January 25th, the majority of students who have opted for remote have stated that they will return to in-person learning at the second semester after all these social gatherings and traveling has ended. So I'll leave that up there for like a few more seconds and I will take it down. Do any of the members of the board have questions about the presentation? I will say Mrs. Gardner is looking into being able to offer in-person learning for our specialized programs at GL starting on January 11th.
Hi, Dr. Barley, it's Michael. Can you just explain if there's any difference between Plan A and hybrid Plan B, what the difference is?
Yes, so Plan A is all students, 1st through 5, and I do get that confused. I do get that mixed up all the time. 1st through 5, Plan A, all students who are in person. We are still allowing people to choose remote. So I don't want people to get confused. We are not mandating that all students come in. All students who want to be in person will come in on January 11th, grades 1st through 5. Does that help?
Yes, and then
hybrid Plan B is half the population. So on January 11th, Group A will start, Cohort A will start at CMS.
So Plan A is every kid every week, and Plan B is 2 cohorts every other week, and both of them have an option to be remote if you want to be.
Absolutely.
Dr. Varley, this is Dr. Swissino. So you mentioned you surveyed, or most high school students said they would return on January 25th. So you did survey them, and did you survey the other grade levels?
I didn't personally serve. This is the conversations I had with GL administration that the majority of students who did opt for remote said they wanted to come back after the holiday break and the large family gatherings
Okay.
have dissipated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Varley, can you just explain the rationale behind hybrid Plan B for grades 6 through 8?
So, one problem we have with grades 6 through, and I'll say 6 through 12, is that the students change classes and the classes are larger. So right now, there are many times that we have not had to go remote because we have had the group A and the group B. And so the students do not come in contact with one another, that many other students, thus not closing us down. I will say that my goal is to bring CMS back to Plan A, but I do not know exactly when that will happen. It's on the horizon where we bring all students back for a half day.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask another question. You mentioned that you had 21 classes that did not have coverage. So do you want to speak briefly about the challenges to getting subs and coverages for those classes?
So it is extremely, it is extremely difficult to find coverage for that amount of classes that are open. I think we had that day, I'm not sure, I think it's like 42 teachers who were out. So we covered half of them during Friday. What that means when we don't have coverage is that other teachers give up their prep or their or different periods, or we lose specials so that those teachers can fill in and provide coverage. So some of the students will have a different teacher in their room every period. So there's no consistency of instruction. And it's basically, for a better word, it's generally babysitting. So because we couldn't find coverage for those employees.
Thank you.
So in the high school going till January 25th, we solved for the staffing problem because our teachers will be teaching remote.
Yes.
And we also solved the challenges of the hybrid plan because I've heard from many people in the community that they're high school students going to class and there's maybe 2, 3, 4 kids in the class.
A lot of our classes have 1 to 2 students in them. So, you know, we have
We're really out of balance.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Varley, I'm sorry, I'm having problems with my connection tonight. I just wanted to clarify, with Plan A, is it going to be the same schedule as the hybrid model is now for first through fifth? For first through fifth, the only difference will be instead of it being every other week, they'll just come in every day. Or is there a slight change to the actual schedule?
There won't be a change to the schedule. The schedule will remain the same.
Okay, so there's no lunch.
There's no lunch. No, as of right now, we cannot solve for lunch.
Okay.
And maybe just to clarify, if a family has decided to go all remote and they want to switch back from all remote to in-person, specifically 1st through 8th grade, when can they make that decision or when can they opt to go back in?
We would like it sooner rather than later. We have in our guidelines 10 days prior. We would definitely be flexible. Like I have the admin team and I talked today that January is the month of flexibility.
So in other words, if they want to make a decision, they can come in time for January 11th to be in person on Plan A, just for 1st through 5th.
Yes.
And if they then decided they wanted to go back remote, they can then just contact the school to say they changed their mind?
Absolutely. We do allow remote to happen immediately.
Okay.
Are there any other comments from the board? Seeing none. Dr. Varley, does that conclude your superintendent's report this evening?
That concludes my superintendent's report. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Varley. We will now open up the citizens hearing for tonight's discussion. And let me put a couple of the guidelines and ground rules. So first, we're going to open up the citizens hearing for anybody who wants to address the board on the topic that we just discussed. And that is the return to school hybrid model that we have in January. So if you have a question about that, we will start with those questions. When we have finished that portion of that, and everybody who wants to ask a question about the model return to school, then continue the citizens hearing and open it up to anybody else who wants to ask any other question about something within the district. Anybody who wants to be heard tonight will get a chance to be heard once. To be recognized, please make sure your first name and your last name is listed on your device and use the raise your hand function of Zoom. I will unmute you. You'll have a chance to come off mute. We prefer that you also turn your camera on so we can interact with you. And if you have more than one question, please ask all the questions at once. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. So with that, I will first open up the citizens hearing. If you can raise your hand and these are questions only now, if you have a question about the return to school model that we have, and we'll go from there. I see a couple of questions, so let me start. Tina Scozafaza. Tina, good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm well, thank you. How are you, Mr. Einstein?
I am outstanding. Did we lose you, Tina? We lost Tina, but we'll come back and we'll find Tina when she comes back. Joanna O'Connor, I see you next.
Hi, sorry, it's actually Dennis.
So you said Dennis?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute or start my video here. So just out of curiosity, is the return to school metrics based or date based? And if so, what are the metrics that we're using for that return to school option? Or the plan A option, I guess I should say.
So what we are finding, I will say the plan A, we were planning on doing plan A January 19th, which is a week and a day later than January 11th. However, what we're finding and what surrounding districts around us who are using plan A, who have been plan A since September. Did we lose him? Is he still here? Is that they're not having any in-school transmission. And therefore, it makes the most sense to get our youngest learners in the building as much as we possibly can. The January 11th date is based on 10 days past when we would assume people would be getting together for a large family gathering.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Worley. Dan McGovern, I see you next. Dan, good evening.
Good evening, Doug. How are you doing?
I'm well, welcome.
Thanks. To everybody, good evening. I'm Dan McGovern, teacher of physics at Governor Livingston and BHEA president. I would like to applaud the decision to move to virtual instruction after winter break in anticipation of a surge in cases. I would like to request, though, that the district remain on virtual instruction for at least 2 weeks after winter break ends for an in-person return no earlier than January 19th. This 2-week window would follow established guidance on isolation since the start of this crisis. I would also request the delay in moving 1st through 5th grade to Plan A until the data shows that the situation is getting better, not worse. The NJ Cali reports still have us firmly in the orange zone, and that schools should plan for all virtual instruction when in the orange, not to welcome even more students physically back to school. We are all eager for this crisis to end, but if we botch our operational plan now, we will only inevitably delay the return to normalcy instead of expediting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Nick O'Sullivan, I see you next. Nick, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Einstein. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you. First off, if I may, just want to thank the board for their continued efforts. This is a nonstop 24-hour-a-day thing with constant switching and adjusting. And I want to thank the outgoing board members for their service and welcome the 2021 ones as well. I'm here tonight to read a statement that was asked of me to read. It's from a group of teachers at the elementary school. So this would be grades 2 through 5. Here is the statement. We would like to understand the reasoning for going to Plan A in the elementary schools on January 11th. Currently, we are in the midst of a second surge of COVID-19 cases in New Jersey, with about 5,000 cases reported per day in the state. Hospital ICUs are approaching capacity. The entire state is in the Department of Health's orange zone, which is deemed, of course, high risk, as we all know. When that happens, the DOH recommends considering implementing fully remote instruction. It also says we should restrict activities that involve interaction with multiple cohorts. Going to Plan A, of course, means mixing 2 large cohorts together. We have seen time and time again this past fall the value of the hybrid schedule. We have avoided so many quarantines because students developed symptoms and tested positive while their cohort was learning remotely. When this has happened, students and staff did not have to quarantine. Despite that, we still have quarantines at the MKMS school and the elementary schools. Plan A will mean even more. We know there have been COVID surges and effects on our district after the recent holidays. We should wait to move to Plan A, especially considering that Berkeley Heights has been experiencing more COVID-19 cases per capita than our neighboring communities of Chatham, New Providence, and Summit. To move back too soon invites an even greater educational disruption to our students through the higher possibility of more quarantines and more shutdowns. Before making a decision to go to Plan A, these teachers are asking the board to please visit the elementary school classrooms and look at the conditions. The plastic desk shields are not an adequate replacement for proper social distancing, where the students can lean back from them, peek around them, or stand up in order to see the board, since it can be hard to see the board from the back half of the room. And they urge the board to not move to Plan A on January 11th. Thank you.
Great, Nick. Thank you very much for your comments. Tina, somehow we lost you before, but we now have you back. I apologize if that was our fault, but welcome back.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So sorry. Thank you, everyone. And I just had one very quick question regarding the rationale for starting with cohort A after already being on vacation or break and then having the remote week. If it started, I believe that we're supposed to start with CMS back with cohort A, when on the original hybrid schedule, it was supposed to be cohort B. I know that this is not necessarily intentional, but for some people who have work schedules who have already worked around the hybrid cohort A and B switches, it's very difficult for parents to adjust the schedule based on the incoming class of cohort A after the break.
And that's a very good question. In my discussions, we came up with this week is cohort B. And one thing we know from our conversations with parents is that a lot of our students enter, I guess, a type of depression after being out of school for so long. So our thought was cohort B would be out. And then it would, if we brought them right back in, they would have 2 weeks of in-person instruction and cohort A would not. So that was the reasoning behind cohort A coming in first on January 11th.
Great, thank you, Dr. Varley. Sai Bagarvi, good evening.
Good evening. Give me 1 second. You hear me? Yeah. Hello.
Good evening. Yes, we can hear you and see you now.
Yeah. So I have a thanks for clarifying on when the Plan A starts for K to 5. I had written previously and I wanted to know is there any plan to address if once we go into Plan A in January 11th, if let's say the state or the region switches to red, and if we are going to go remote, has for the special services or for the students with special needs, has the school districts thought of opening up like maybe the gyms or something just for the kids with IEPs if we were forced to go remote?
Well, we have had that discussion, and no matter what, if we have to go, if it comes red, the recommendation will be to go fully remote. And that would mean for all students, because it would be a safe and health and safety issue. And so we do have to look out for all of our students and go fully remote as we did in the spring.
No, I mean, have you thought of other options like maybe opening the gyms, keeping them 10 feet apart?
If you read the statement by the Department of Health, we would need to go remote. We wouldn't have an option in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next person I see is Michael Leblanc. Michael, good evening.
Good evening. I would like to thank the board and the district for releasing that dashboard information. It shows a lot of important data that the district should definitely consider when reopening. Berkeley Heights schools have proven to be exceptionally safe, probably safer than most of our workplaces or anywhere else. We've only had 1 week where we were over 0.01% of positivity. And that was after the Halloween incidents that happened off of campus. So our school system has proven to be exceptionally safe. And I'd like to commend the staff of our school district in their success in maintaining the health and welfare of our students, because they have been truly successful. But I will say that we should definitely move forward with Plan A as soon as possible. Our students are not receiving the best possible education they could be. Blended and remote instruction is not nearly as efficient or quality as in-person instruction. And we should move with Plan A as soon as possible. And the red guidelines of the county do not represent our community. Our community is not seeing a huge surge, especially among children. So we should definitely proceed with Plan A and not just close schools because the entire county, which other parts are having severe outbreaks when we are not in our town.
Great, Michael, thank you very much. I will pause. I don't see anybody else's hand raised on the subject of return to school and our hybrid model. Is there anybody else who wants to address the board on the hybrid return to school model for January? If you do, raise your hand now. Okay, not seeing any. We will now continue with the citizens hearing, and anybody who would like to address the board on any other educational topics that they'd like to speak, go through the same process, raise your hand, and we will get to each of you this evening. Brianna Kagan. Brianna, good evening. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Mr. Einstein?
Outstanding. Thank you.
All right. So this is a little scary. There are like a lot of people here.
Okay, take your time. There's still a lot of people, but take your time.
All right. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Brianna Kagan. I'm a senior at Governor Livingston. In light of the recent stories so bravely published by David Urbank, I would like to bring my story to this platform. Previously, I've been afraid to share this with so many people, but after all the stories that have been published, I've been given the courage to bring my specific situation to light. I've spoken at Board of Ed meetings before about student advocacy and have been known to not be afraid to speak my mind. However, I haven't always been like that. Going back as early as I can remember, I was bullied. I was called dramatic and fat in elementary school, which then translated into fat and ugly. In fact, I was once asked if I was pregnant in the cafeteria lunch line, aged 12. While all of these are things that I might be able to giggle about now, back then it was completely and totally traumatizing. In front of what felt like the entire school, my biggest insecurities were put directly under a microscope and then projected onto a big screen. I have since learned that the experiences that I faced are not even a fraction of the experiences others have had, which deeply saddens me to think that the worst years of my life were so much worse for many others. I did not come here today to bash the school district, any administrators, or the administrative action taken in these circumstances. However, I would like to point out some of the things that I have experienced in my middle school years and the consequences, to my knowledge, which I also understand may be incomplete due to student privacy laws that my bullies faced. First, in the 6th grade, I was harassed daily by more than one person jointly for the way my body looked, how I dressed, and the soccer team I played on. When I reported it, the boys had to apologize to me in front of the principal, but the attacks never ceased. I spent the rest of the school year miserable and afraid to eat lunch in the cafeteria. Next, in the 7th grade, I developed a new sense of style. My favorite outfit was criticized in front of the entire lunch line, and I was asked, "Are you pregnant? Because you sure look like it," in front of at least 25 people. I was so embarrassed that I ran out of the cafeteria and cried in the hallway. To my knowledge, this person never faced any serious consequences other than having to apologize to me, and their insults continued for the rest of the year. Later, by this same individual, I was called the Pillsbury Doughboy in order to make fun of my appearance. The 8th grade was the worst year of my adolescence by a long shot. I was continuously called fat, still. But now added on to that, I was being harassed and asked out on dates as a joke because who could ever like the fat girl, right? I had food thrown at me and water bottles knocked out of my hands so it spilled down my shirt. The stuff that only happens in movies. Except this time, I was afraid to report it. The fear of what had happened in prior circumstance, where what was supposed to stop my bullies fueled them, stopped me in my tracks completely. And instead, I went to my guidance counselor to talk about it because I was upset, but refused to name names to avoid an HIB report. I have since not brought any indiscretion with my peers to a guidance counselor or anyone in a similar position. Complacency in these situations is not an option. We must work together to ensure that students feel protected and in a safe environment, which these stories have made clear that students do not. Complacency can be deadly in circumstances like these. I want to say clearly that I do not blame anyone for what happened to me except the offenders, and I have definitely had my views changed. Most importantly, it has taught me that empathy is always an option and to never choose hate towards others. I do believe our school district is moving in the right direction to make major change. I've seen it happen at GL through groups like the Student Advisory Board, which I am proud to be a part of, and the rewrite of the Student Handbook. GL Unfiltered, Saga, and so many other student-led groups. But student-led groups cannot be where this train stops. Parents, please, I beg you to encourage your children to choose kindness, and everyone who works at BHPSNJ schools, encourage your students to choose kindness as well. Hate is not birthed, it's learned, but kindness can be learned as well. Let's all work on choosing kindness and make Berkeley Heights schools a safe place for students of all shapes, sizes, gender identities, races, sexual orientations, and anything else that makes them special. Not different, but special. Thank you.
Nicole Emma, you're up next.
Okay, yeah, as Brianna said, there's a lot of people here and I'm a little nervous, so I'm sorry if I misspeak at all. But hi, my name is Nicole. I'm a senior and I'm the president of Saga at GL. In light of recent events on social media, the club came together today and on Friday to consider some ideas to present to the board. We thought about 3 different main ideas to talk to you about tonight to give our input as students on how the school can work to be more supportive. So I'm going to address 2 of these ideas, and then if you could allow Elizabeth Connolly to speak next to address the other point we wanted to talk about tonight, that would be great. So the first thing we think the school can do to be more supportive is to actually connect with the Saga Club. I've been the president of Saga all year, and I've never heard from any administrators about the club. They've never checked in to see what we're working on and what we want to do. But more importantly, when we present things to the administration, it feels like a lot of them get ignored. We've been asking for gender neutral bathrooms and asking for the school to work on allowing kids to feel comfortable in the locker room they use for gym classes for 1.5 years now, and nothing has ever really came from that. The school said they were looking into it, and maybe behind the scenes they have been working on that, but as far as we know, nothing, as far as the club knows, nothing has been made with that, and it's just unfair that students come to school and avoid using the bathroom all day just because of how uncomfortable it makes them feel that they have to use the bathroom of a gender they don't identify with. And another thing is we did create the support zone last year, which was mentioned tonight, and the administration allowed us to present to all the teachers about it, and that was fantastic. Ms. Oliveira came to one of our meetings before the creation of the support zone, and Ms. Bartlett was at a round table with us. And then a lot of administrators were at the lunch and learns hosted by the former presidents, Jason, Rachel, but to my knowledge, no one ever followed up or reached out to us afterward. And it sometimes feels like the school is using a club that I'm so passionate about to prove that they're supportive of LGBTQ students and then not supporting that club. And I know that's not the intention, but just sometimes it feels like that. And tonight, some of the action plans the school is working on were addressed. And some of the students who are directly impacted by that behavior, the students in Saga, have never even been consulted about that. Furthermore, the second thing we wanted to address is why it seems like no one reports a lot of the behavior. And I think Brianna talked about this a bit. GL, a lot of students don't really trust the school to properly handle these situations. And I think that if the administration were to really work to build trust with students, and I know that they're trying to, and again, this takes years. And I was talking to Saga today and I said, I really hope in the future, like the freshmen who are in the club, I said, I hope when you guys are seniors, things really do change. We discussed the idea of potential sensitivity training for students and staff, which I heard tonight that they're working on that, and that's great. I'm really glad that we're on the same page. But another thing we talked about is when this type of homophobic, racist, sexist, xenophobic, and whatever other type of behavior like this occurs, instead of just reprimanding students, like for example, if they were to get a detention, this needs to be a teaching moment. If students were to call someone a homophobic slur, for example, and then they get a detention because of it, the only thing that's going to change is the student's going to be more careful about getting caught. They won't understand the implications of their actions, which is a huge part of preventing them from repeating that behavior. Students are sometimes a product of where they're raised, and if they're not being taught about being supportive of other students at home, then they're going to engage in behavior that reflects that at school. And when they do that, the school needs to work to really educate them on why that's wrong. And I think that's going to go a long way in changing things and also building trust with students. So that's all I had from the Saga Club. But if you wouldn't mind allowing Elizabeth Connolly to speak next, I believe Elizabeth has their hand raised. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm also a member of Saga. I'm a sophomore this year, and I went over the weekend and reviewed a bunch of policies sent out by the district. And you guys have a specific policy about transgender students. And in the policy, you state directly, transgender students who are uncomfortable using sex-segregated bathrooms should be provided with a safe and adequate alternative. Saga has reached out in the past regarding these gender-neutral bathrooms, but so far, no response has been made. Saga is still willing to partner with the district and the administration to see what can be done about this issue. It's also clear through another policy sent out by the district, the 2,260 Affirmative Action Program for Schools and Classroom Practices. This policy is written in a very heteronormative sense, stating that there are two genders and openly discriminates against genders existing out of the binary. I know that this was most likely not the intention sent out by the district when writing this policy, but it is very detrimental to non-binary youths like at GL.
Nicole and Elizabeth, thank you very much for your comments. The next person I see is Shri. Find where you are.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having a forum for this. I also would like to speak on the same topic. I am a former GL student. I'm an alumni. I graduated in 2015. And I want to thank you for addressing the issue at the beginning, but I still think there is a lot more work to be done. It's clearly, I want to also thank David Urbanky for bringing this issue to light and the number of students who have shared their stories. I know I could also add to the stories, but I feel like there's been a lot of stories put out there, and I'm more interested in seeing what we can do to address these issues. So I want to speak on that. So I think it's important that you've detailed some first steps. I appreciate the DEI initiatives that you've spoken about, but I think also part of it is accepting responsibility and accountability. I feel like often, I know it seems like maybe things are being done behind the scenes, but we don't really know if things are addressed, if there's no transparency. And I understand certain things need to be kept confidential, but I think especially if someone else is a party to something or was a victim of bullying or some incident, they deserve a little bit of more answers so they know that their problem was actually addressed. Otherwise, often the bullying just continues. And so I didn't really appreciate the comment about it being always addressed in the past, because I definitely know past incidents that were not properly addressed. And I think it's hard to always say always, because we're all learning and growing. And I want to echo Matthew's comments at the end. I really appreciated that he said it's a larger culture shift that needs to start at a young age. And I think that's definitely true, but I also think it is something that we can work on even at GL at the high school, because high school is a formative time. And so I think a lot of things are even being talked about now in terms of how we're teaching sex ed to younger students and how we're teaching anti-racist ideology and things like that can start at a younger age, but I think it also needs to continue at the high school. And so I think we need to be committed to talking about long-term solutions. As you said, this will take time, and I think that's important to recognize, but I also don't think we should use that just as a blanket statement, because often that can lead to slower progress. So I think it'd be great to have more of a community work group to have more input on different solutions and have a forum. It'd be great if we could have an open communication with not just the superintendent, but also Board of Ed members. It'd be great if we could talk about this in the longer term rather than just being a one-time in a board meeting. I appreciate the diversity committee and the students groups that have been working on it, but I do agree that this is not just, should not be put on just student groups. A diversity committee works on a lot of different things, and I think that's one way of addressing it, but will not address all of the bullying and discrimination that has been brought to light. So I really appreciated Nicole's comment about how this can be a teaching moment. And I think we should really think about how we want to address things as long-term problems rather than just a one-off issue that occurs. Because as she said, or I believe someone said that just addressing in the principal's office one time and getting an apology often doesn't lead to a change in behavior. So I think if we could have more of a longer-term discussion about this to think about real solutions, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Hi, so my name is Nuri. I was a GL alumnus in 2018, and basically at the end of senior year, like third semester, we have sex ed, and I realized they don't really talk about gay people that much in sex ed, and that just didn't really make any sense to me. If it's a class about sex ed, you should talk about sexuality. So September 2018, I started doing some Facebook posts, trying to start talking to people, town council, Board of Ed, everyone that I could think of. And I'm gonna try to keep this as quick because it has been like a 2-year process. And then winter of 2018, I finally spoke to the Board of Ed in a meeting, and I just basically explained why I thought this was important. And the teachers were protesting, so all the teachers were there. And I remember that after I finished my speech, my health teacher came up to me and she said, like, you did such a good job. Like, I completely agree, which shows me that she was supportive and open to learning more. And I never thought like she specifically left things out on purpose. It was just more, she probably didn't think of it. And I was also in Saga, so like it's more on my mind. And then I had a meeting with the health supervisor that same winter of 2018. And what I was told is, the curriculum goes through this 5-year cycle. We can't change the curriculum right now, but we can change the lesson plans and it will be formally changed later. Great, that's fine. And it was a little bit difficult, like continuing to communicate with her. Like, technically this is not my job to do, but it is her job to answer her emails about these things. And then in December 2019, there was a new curriculum. Great, wonderful. It was sent to me. Unit 5 is called Advanced Sexuality, Gender Understanding, and LGBTQ communities. I don't know why the B is missing, but let's move on. We're making some progress. So in that unit, it shows that there's supposed to be 8 days, not including the test day, of basically that unit. So, but I didn't completely trust the school that they would teach it, because I was told the year before that the lesson plans would just be changed, so the students would still be learning that material. And I got answers varying from none to like a little bit. So then I asked again, summer of 2020, what did you learn? And I got basically the same response, some to very little, and it just really isn't fair. And To try to prevent that, I met with the health supervisor again in the winter of 2019 going into 2020. And I asked her, you know, can I have a meeting with all the teachers? I strongly feel that I can convince them why this is important to teach. And one teacher was brought in along with the health supervisor. And I was just told the other teachers can't make it. And then once the teacher left, the health supervisor was honestly very unprofessional, just talking to me kind of aggressively, telling me like I can't post about this on Facebook, basically saying that that they've been doing everything that I wanted, like why am I like continuing to do this? And I like asked, maybe could do a survey to make sure that students are learning this. And she was just saying like, we can't do that. No, absolutely not. It's not fair. And so basically I got the same exact results. Like for the seniors of 2020, I tried to ask like varying people who I don't know at all. And it's just little to none. And it's just extremely unfair. And it's just not really fair, because why would someone in the LGBT plus community have to hope, I'm going to get this specific teacher for me to feel mentioned? It just doesn't really make any sense. And, this is the time, like I felt like when I was seeing all this happen, I was like, you guys could have pointed to this and to be like, oh, I'm working with this previous student. And we've been trying to like help students learn more about the LGBT plus community. That could have been like a great response. And you guys just can't have that, which is just honestly sad, because like, I don't want to, be annoying and be nagging and, can this please get done? Can this please get done? I want it to get done. I want it to be proud of my town. I want to say, look, like this is like awful stuff that has happened, but look how far we've come. And I honestly feel like I've been met with a lot of resistance and excuses. Like this has been like 2.5 years since I brought this up. And everyone who's in charge of this is an adult. Board of Ed members, teachers, the health supervisor, you guys are all adults. This is your job. You guys are all adults. Someone needs to take responsibility. And it was pretty exhausting just hearing people say, oh, well, this is for the teachers, this is for the health supervisor, this is like, someone needs to take responsibility. All of you are a part of the education system. And yeah, but honestly, like, I don't want to be like, this is homophobic, this is transphobic. I don't want to be like that. I want to see improvement. I want to see growth. And I strongly believe that it is possible. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yuri, thank you very much for your comments. Tim.
Hi, I've been dying to talk over here. First of all, I want to commend everyone that came forward. I think those stories are unbelievable. So I grew up in Berkeley Heights. I went through the entire school system of Berkeley Heights, Mountain Park, Governor Livingston. I have future nieces and nephews that are going to go to Governor Livingston as well. My parents have lived in Berkeley Heights for 35 plus years. So in the 90s, when I went to GL, dealing with homophobia back then, it was different back then. I was very strong-minded. We didn't have social media. We didn't have the anxiety that the kids have these days. So I dealt with it. I dealt with the fact that I ate lunch Monday through Friday in the bathroom stall alone because I was being called a faggot when I tried to sit at a lunch table. So I dealt with that. That's not what I'm here about. This is what my situation, what my experience at GL, that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is the future of my nieces and my nephews going to this school that's so blatantly racist, homophobic. Having a bunch of clubs and courses on diversity that are not mandatory does zilch, nothing. Guess what? Every school in the world does it. You do not get a pat on your back for having a club for LGBTQ, which in fact, you just left the T out of LGBTQ, which is actually another disturbing thing. So I actually tried speaking to Dr. Varley 3 times. I've emailed everybody. I got in touch with the mayor this morning. I talked to Angie Devaney, and I have a statement from the mayor to you. I invited her here tonight, but she actually had something else to go to, some other town hall that she had to go to. So this is the statement that the mayor wants me to tell you. Let me begin by saying there is no space in the township of Berkeley Heights for racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and certainly not bullying. Let me repeat that sentence again slowly. I'm not going to repeat it again, but if any of you don't understand what those terms mean, please raise your hand and I'll tell you. Thank you. In June, the township created the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Committee. In 2021, we will move to make a permanent standing committee dedicated to diversity, inclusion, integration of all residents and future residents in our community. As this community belongs to all of us. This TRHT committee comprised of many stakeholders, including the police department, Board of Education, the diverse group of resident volunteers or different ethnicities and backgrounds, a representative LGBTQ community, the YMCA, the faith community, student youth community, the township council, me and the mayor. This group is meant to work collaboratively under one tent, as well as address systemic racism, as well as bullying in the LGBT community in our individual organization. Not only are we rolling up our sleeves and we have just begun to do the work or changing this culture, we want the TRHC committee to also be safe and a safe space to listen to you. So my question is, the mayor got back to my email. Dr. Varley never returned any of my emails. Nobody actually did. I've called the superintendent a few times. So the fact that I've gotten in touch with the mayor and she's actually admitting that there's a problem is a little bit of an issue to me, because having clubs and courses doesn't help. When I was at GL, what did I do as a teenager when I was being bullied, physically and mentally abused? I went to leadership and I went to faculty. What did they tell me? They told me to toughen up. They told me to get over it. That's what your faculty did to me. And thank you for David Urbanky for bringing light to this. And everybody is actually hundreds. There's been almost 1,000 stories come forward, and David Urbanky's stories on his Instagram of people's horrific experiences that they've had at GL. And there's over 2,000, let me just correct you, Dr. Varley, it's not 1,500, it's actually 2,000 and probably I think 15 right now of signatures on change.org. So having clubs and courses is not going to help. So my question to you is, what are you doing to train the faculty and to educate the faculty? Because the fish rots from the head. So it's not the students that are the problem, it's the faculty that's the problem. And it's the superintendents that's the problem. We are taxpayers and we demand answers. And I will not send my niece and my nephew to a racist, homophobic school. So I need to know what your action plan is, and I need to know what it is, how are we receiving this information? Because we had to scrouge and find, and I wasn't even invited to this meeting. So this needs to be more of a public, transparent forum, because you guys are a little sneaky about it. So I had to find out from Instagram about this meeting tonight. So I need to know, what is your action plan besides your courses and your classes on diversity? And this, I'm asking you, Dr. Varley.
So I will tell you that I've never received a message from you or an email to my personal account. So nothing has ever come from you. I do respond within 24 hours of anyone who has emailed me. So moving forward, if you listen to my intro speech, we are doing many things. We have trained our teachers in the beginning of the year by Mark Strachan in anti-bias training. We have our elementary principals went to Teachers College of Columbia to learn anti-racism and anti-bias training. We have another training coming up in February for all of our staff members. We're doing diversity, equity, and inclusion training for all of our staff members starting in January. So those are, as far as training goes, those are the things we have begun to do. And we will continue working on this to make our schools much more inclusive.
I can send you screenshots of all 14 emails I sent you. If you would please email me your email address, because clearly it's the wrong one. It's tim.petici@gmail.com.
Okay.
Because the fact that I can get in touch with the mayor and nobody at the superintendent, like you're forgetting, you work for us. We pay your salary. Don't forget that. And I'm not sending my niece and nephews to a racist, homophobic school. That's for sure. I can't hear you. You need internet.
Jared Weisfeld, you're next.
Hi, thank you very much. Dr. Varley, I actually have a question for you. When is the plan to actually hopefully go back to full-time school every day, normal hours in person?
As soon as we can solve for lunch, that is right now our issue. We, having multiple children and talking hundreds of children in a cafeteria without masks on is definitely an issue, as well as the teachers supervising students while they don't have masks on. So that's something we're trying to work through. And, we're hoping the vaccine will be here sooner rather than later so that we can get our students back in school.
Just two more questions. First of all, I want to commend you on you're really doing a great job actually keeping these kids in school. It's very impressive. So the second question I have for you is, so on the vaccine front, are teachers going to be required to get the vaccine?
Oh my God.
At this time, no. I'm not sure it's something that we can require. I can definitely talk to the Board of Education's attorney. I know we couldn't require teachers to get tested at the beginning of the school year. I did send out an email to the teaching staff today about how they are in Tier 1B. And so I think the thought is that by February, we will have vaccines for the teaching staff.
Awesome. And the last question is what is the actual issue with lunch? The kids can't eat at their desks?
Well, that would be a small classroom, right? So if we're moving to Plan A and we have 20 students in a classroom with their mask off, it brings, we know that it comes from saliva and droplets, and all the students would have their masks off, as well as the teaching staff, and who's going to supervise them at that time.
Fair enough. All right. Well, hopefully they could all get back into school full time this year. And thank you very much for all you've done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Jared, thank you very much. Tracy Barcassini. Tracy, good evening.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to thank David Urbanky and all the former and current students that have told their stories. I am one of the advisors of the Sexuality and Gender Acceptance Club at GL, also known as Saga. And I did want to first acknowledge, I wasn't going to do this, but I did want to acknowledge that GL administration has been very supportive of our club, very supportive of me, and I have met with Mr. Nixon several times. We haven't had an opportunity really this year, but I know he always makes himself available and has been very supportive of any event or program that we've been involved in. So I just wanted to touch on three things that come up a lot, have come up a lot over the years with our students. And one that is a little tricky is that apparently we've had, like, this year, we don't have as many members as we did last year. And I think the remote learning is kind of a part of that, because kids are in their homes on Zoom and maybe they don't feel as comfortable as they would in a classroom at school. The kids come at lunchtime and they eat lunch, and it's a nice atmosphere. But I have heard from the kids that some kids are afraid to join the club because they're afraid just by joining the club that they'll be targeted. So that's just something I want to put out there, that kind of, speaks to the culture that they're facing. And then the three things I just wanted to mention were the three things that come up a lot with the kids. One is the gender neutral bathrooms. We have students that will not go to the bathroom in school because they're uncomfortable. And Mr. Nixon and I had talked about that last year, and he had updated us. And I know, with COVID, things are, a little off, but I would like to know if there's a plan for all the schools to offer gender neutral bathrooms. And locker rooms are also a concern for our students. And the health curriculum comes up every year. Senior health is concerning to the kids. And also, they really would like to reach out to the middle schools, to Columbia and Deerfield, and perhaps start a Saga chapter at each of those schools. So that's something that we'll be, kind of wanting to pursue. And that's all. Thank you for listening.
Tracy, thank you very much. Stephanie Spano. Stephanie, good evening.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for calling on me. Dear Dr. Varley and members of the Board of Ed, my name is Stephanie Spano and I teach at Mary Kay McMillan, Mountain Park, Thomas P. Hughes, and William Woodruff schools. I'm speaking now to voice my concerns regarding the district's potential decision to move the 1 to 5 schools to Plan A on January 11th. According to New Jersey Department of Health Communicable Disease Service Weekly Reports 46 through 50, our district's region has been at the orange, also known as high risk, COVID-19 Activity Level Index or CALI score since November 14th. Cases have increased significantly throughout our state, community, and yes, even our schools. Our region has not been at the green or low risk CALI score since the week ending September 12th. Page 3 of the recommendations from the Department of Health clearly states that districts with an orange or high risk CALI score should, quote, restrict activities that involve interactions with multiple cohorts and consider implementing fully remote learning, end quote. This is the complete opposite of the district's intention for the 1 to 5 buildings. We are in our current situation because of all the measures the district has implemented since September. Teachers, support staff, custodians, nurses, and principals have worked relentlessly to make sure that students are socially distanced and follow good hygiene practices while receiving effective instruction. It is reckless and disrespectful to all of these stakeholders to assume that if we move to Plan A, we will be able to maintain the same level of safety and prevent future outbreaks. Many of the cases at the early childhood and elementary schools have been reported during the students' cohort's remote weeks, preventing the need for large-scale quarantines or building closures. If we move to Plan A, anytime there is a positive case, there will always be a group that needs to quarantine. In closing, please consider postponing the move to Plan A until it is truly safe to do so. Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you very much. Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Giannone. I am a GL alum of the class of 2012, and I went to Deerfield Middle School in Mountainside. I just first want to thank David Urbanky for speaking about this and allowing other students to talk about their experiences. My main concern at the moment is it's so wonderful that there are so many clubs and committees that exist in the first place that, if I'm being honest, is wonderful in itself based on the towns that go to GL. And I think my biggest thing is how can we make sure that you are holding up your end of these promises? My question is, will there be emails that are sent out to the school about what specifically is happening? And also, what are you going to do about staff that does not want to comply with these rules that will bring GL into the 21st century? And that's a question for any of the staff that are here today.
So we did a board report in, I think it was November, on all the diversity committees and our action teams and what's been going on so far. We will have a follow-up report in the spring after, we have spent more time together. The committees are new. We started in the summer, and in the fall, they really got rolling with students and teachers. And so we will continue to report out at our public meetings on what's happening with our diversity, equity, and inclusion committees. As far as staff members, I personally, I will say this, I believe, and I will say the Board of Education and the administrative team are fully supportive of this as well. We believe in inclusion, and it is one of the things that I send out on a regular basis is you can't be inspired or empowered if you're not included. And so our staff members will be held accountable if they show any kind of biased incidents towards our student population.
And following that, what, based on, previous discussions of kids going to staff or being afraid to go to staff because of these, specifically staff members not being able to help them, or students being scared to go to staff members because they won't be helped. What is going to happen to those staff members? I guess I'm just looking for, how can we know that you are holding up an accountability? Because thus far, I have experience going to a vice principal of my time and nothing being done about a cyberbullying situation and being told this is just how boys get over breakups. And I think that something needs to be done to make sure that students know that there is an accountability on your end. How will you do that?
So to address if the students are upset or do not want to go to specific adults in the building, we do have the anonymous link that students can report things. So their names are not associated with it. And then granted, if we cannot attribute anything or any proof, it's just like in the regular world. If there's no proof, no actionable items, there's not a whole lot we can do. If we don't know if it happened and we don't know who it happened to or who did it, we really can't do anything about it. However, if we have factual, specific information, we do follow through. I spend a lot of time with my administrative team when things happen, and we go through events that have occurred within the district. I mean, and I would say it happens anywhere from first grade to 12th grade, where we have very tough conversations if we have specific information that we can address.
Okay. And if
I'm sorry. Can I just say something, Dr. Varley? If a student feels as though they're not being listened to through the regular channels, do you want to hear about that directly from that student?
Absolutely.
Okay. And does right and Mr. McKinney, do you want to hear about it directly from that student? He may be muted, but I know he does, and I know that Dr. Janosko wants to hear about it as well. So let's just say that if you don't feel like you're being heard, then go to one of these very senior administrators. They will listen to you.
Absolutely. I will listen to you. I've had multiple students send me emails, and I have addressed the issues that they have sent to me.
And one more follow-up question. You mentioned the term formal complaint, and I would say that a student going directly to you or Mr. McKinney would be considered a formal complaint. If there is no formal complaint, if there is the case that has come up multiple times in David's stories that he's shared, that a staff member has been in the room and nothing has been done about a specific incident that's happening in the room and they're watching it, or it's the staff member who is specifically targeting the kids, that can send a message of these staff members don't care about me. How are you going to foster a sense of culture
that the staff members finally going to care about these kids?
I would say that the majority, and I can't speak for every single staff member, right? Like I would say that most educators go into education because they love children and they love teaching. Is there the option, the chance that there are some outliers in that? Absolutely. I would like to know about it. I have not heard recently, I have not heard of any of these incidents happening. And if I don't know about them, I cannot do anything about them.
I guess to close, now you've heard about them. They're all public on David's Instagram stories, so you can read them over and over. And I really do hope, for the sake of the future of the kids of this school. It was a tough time for me. I can't imagine those who have come forward with even worse experiences. So I really, truly hope that there's something about the culture that's done. It's not about the face value of a committee. It's not about the face value of these clubs. I really do hope that the culture is spoken about, is talked about behind closed doors, because that is the real monster that is Berkeley Heights and Mountainside. It's a culture of parents and adults who are spreading this rot of all of these homophobia, sexism, transphobia, xenophobia, racism. It's all of it. So I really do hope that behind closed doors, the culture is spoken about with adults.
Absolutely. I will say Mr. Nixon and I went through every single post. So, and also has Dr. Janosko has as well.
Great.
Alyssa, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Sean Procaccini, you're up next. Sean, good evening.
Hi, I'm Sean Procaccini. I am a very, very proud GL alum from the class of 2014. This is my my GL Hilltop Players t-shirt that I have on. Alyssa, I think that what you said was very, very well told, and I think you really got to the core of the issue that we are trying to emphasize. There are some things that I want to thank the administration for so far. First of all, thank you for having the flexibility to open up this Board of Ed meeting to have, more subjects than were planned originally. And I do think that some of the ideas that Dr. Varley and Mr. Nixon highlighted at the beginning of the meeting are very wise, namely to diversify the staff. I think that's very wise. I think that you probably can take things a few steps further by putting more marginalized people in prominent positions and allowing them to steer the direction of change. Seeing, a lot of cis, straight, white faces in prominent positions of power in the school district and in the town in general is very, it can be very frustrating to a lot of people who are pushing for change, because people who enjoy the certain level of privilege that white folks like us do are not always able to independently recognize the issues that are being faced by the marginalized. And that is why I think that you should consider more seriously putting marginalized people in more prominent positions of power in the district and consulting them on important decisions moving forward. I also think that adding new social justice and diversity-centered classes is very wise, but again, a step that you can take further in that direction is to change the curriculum of current classes in all departments. I believe that it should be impossible to graduate from GL without an extensive social justice-centered education. I don't think that it's only left up to the humanities like history and English to teach social justice issues. I think there is also room for it in math and science classes as well in STEM. And I am very happy to be able to provide resources to that regard if the district is interested. I think that the district would do well to stop mentioning student-led organizations when it's talking about what it's achieved in terms of diversity and inclusion. Trying to change the culture of the school doesn't really have anything to do with student organizations. The district is unable to take credit for them. And I think that emphasizing the role of those clubs, when we've heard a few times tonight that they very rarely hear from the administration unprompted, I think it's a bit disingenuous. And so I would suggest toning that down a little bit. I think that one of the really big asks, which has not been discussed so far, is to keep law enforcement out of Governor Livingston. I don't believe that police officers belong in schools. I don't believe that any marginalized student will ever be safe in a school where there is a police officer. I think that it will cause more harm than good, and it will not solve any of the issues you anticipate it solving. And so my strong suggestion tonight, if there is only one takeaway from what I say, is to keep cops out of Berkeley Heights public schools. Clearly, something that's been expressed prior to my comments is that our biggest concern is the follow-up. We need to make sure that these are not one-time commitments, that they are long-time commitments. And if students and their families and other members of the community were able to receive regular updates on the school's progress with changing its culture of bigotry, then I think that that would be the best way to be transparent in making it clear that you're actually committed to the long-term work of creating a new culture at Berkeley Heights Public Schools. I think that we need transparency, and you need to show us what you do as we move along in the process. And I hope that you understand why people are so hesitant to send stories to the official district email address or to submit them anonymously. There is a certain level of trust that has been broken between GL in particular and its students. It is the administration's responsibility to rebuild that trust. Making appeals and requests for people to come forward with their stories, when in the past they've been shown that coming forward with their stories will really lead to no change whatsoever, is very demoralizing. And I think that we need to de-emphasize the role of the victims of these situations, and we need to instead emphasize the role that the administration and the district can play in creating a new level of respect and trust with its marginalized students in particular. You have truly lost the trust of a lot of your students, and it is your responsibility to rebuild it. And for what it's worth, I want to echo what a lot of other educators have been saying here tonight, including Mr. O'Sullivan and Ms. Spano, which is that I think that the school should delay opening in interest of the physical safety of the students and the teachers. It seems like, I can't speak for all of the staff, but all of the staff that we've heard from tonight are asking you to delay the opening, and I think that you should listen to them, please.
Great. Sean, thank you very much for your comments. Zach Cohn. Zach, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you fine. Good evening.
Great. Good evening. My name is Zach Cohn. I graduated in 2009 from Governor Livingston. I went on to take on a career as an educator, as a teacher in Baltimore City, and recently have moved to managing a large team of 125 people at a technology company. My first thought when reading David's stories, and I appreciate him opening the forum that was obviously so needed, was to reflect on what this would mean if it were my team or my classroom. And if a fraction of what was shared with me, my first thought, and I think all of your first thoughts should be, what culture have I allowed to to spread in my institution, in my team, in my classroom, this culture of impunity that students believe and faculty, staff think that they can do these things and that there'll be no repercussions for them. And so I would be sort of wrought with guilt over whatever culture I'd had allowed to develop or take root with the people that I'm tasked with teaching, educating, leading, and would really want to reflect on that if it were my organization. So I would love to hear, and I appreciate that many of you have shared that you're new. Dr. Varley, you've shared that you've only been enrolled for about 2 years. I get all that, and I appreciate sort of the focus on the future, right? Like, what are we doing now to address this? I would say that I have noticed a serious lack of reflection on what has led here, and sort of an explanation that you all understand what has happened up till now to cause this sort of explosion of stories from people sharing some pretty horrific experiences at Governor Livingston. So I'd like to share that. I also like to add on that Dr. Varley, you shared, and I think rightfully so, I can speak from my own experience, that people go into education because they love students, they love teaching, they love educating, they love being with students. But I find it sort of hard for you to hold the duality in your mind, or at least express it, that teachers both love students and want to be with them and want to educate them, but also we shouldn't listen to the teachers that are telling you that we shouldn't go into plan A. If you believe what you say, which I hope that you do, students want to be, or teachers want to be with their students, they want to be present, they want to be physically with their students and teaching and going back to normal because that's what they signed up for. And if they're foregoing that sort of face-to-face work that really fills their tank and sort of makes them happy, fulfills them, to say that this isn't safe, then you should probably listen to those people because they want to be back in the classroom just as much as anyone. So I'll finish by returning back to my original point and asking any of the administrators that are on the call to share any reflections that they have about the culture that's precipitated at Governor Livingston that has led to these stories, and sort of your role in that and how you plan to change your behavior and your tactics moving forward.
So I guess I will, I have only been here for 1.5 years, but if you listen to my opening statement, when we had some issues that came in early, I would say January 2020, where I realized that we had an issue with some of our students being treated differently than other students. And we started then with our roundtables on bias and targeting and bullying, etc. So we have been working on it since I've been here, trying to make sure that we change this culture, but culture does not change overnight. It's one of those things that you listen to and you're devastated for people, and we have to do better. And it is my mission and vision to make sure that we are the best we possibly can be in the most inclusive environment.
Great, thank you, Dr. Varley. Jace Ederman. Jace, good evening.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. So I apologize for glancing down. I wrote down what I was going to say. My name is Jace Ederman, and I was a graduate of the class of 2020, so I just graduated last spring. And I would like to continue talking on some of the points of some of the previous students. Just for some context, I was the previous president, or one of the previous presidents of the Saga Club. And me and my co-president last year initiated the Support Zone, which was a project to teach teachers how to support their LGBTQ+ students. For starters, I'd like to say that I was a transgender student. I was a Jewish student. And I never felt safe at school. Just didn't. I don't feel that I should even say what I went through specifically, because there's really no point, because I've said it all before and it's been ignored. By the time that I got to GL, I honestly just learned to shut up about it because nobody cared. And even when I did have those moments where I really needed somebody and I went to the guidance department, let's say, it was ignored. And I was told to, well, man up, go for it, whatever. Some of the slurs I've been called in the hallways, both homophobic slurs and anti-Semitic slurs, it's something I should never repeat and nobody should ever say. I was called things in 6th grade that I didn't even know what they meant yet. It was horrible. I know the schools are striving to be better, and I really, really, really appreciate that. But I'd like to know what the board can do for the students that they have already wronged. Nothing will change the past, but I'm asking for a sincere apology for all of the people that were wronged by the school. I was wronged, so many other kids were wronged, and we deserve an apology. Dr. Varley, is this something that you think you can do? If I'm speaking honestly, I don't know if I can believe that anything will change for future generations if we don't actually get an apology for what's already occurred. Thanks.
So I do believe in my emails, I have apologized for, and I'm saddened by what has happened to people previously in the district. If you remember, I met with your support group last year at the for the safe zones. I met with you guys at the end of last year, and I cannot imagine what the student population has gone through. And I sincerely apologize. I can tell you that we are going to do better. We are working hard to do better for all students.
Dr. Varley, as I see that both Sean and Tim are saying, can you please, like right here, right now, please apologize to us? We are so hurt by the actions of the school district, and I know you haven't been here for that long. I'm well aware that you've only been superintendent for a year, and I grew up with Miss Ratner, and I know that this is such a hard thing for you to come into, and I understand that. But can you please here right now, for all of the students that are on this call right now who have been wronged by the school district, can you please give us a very nice, heartfelt "I'm sorry"? I think it would really help.
I am completely sorry for any hard feelings, things that have hurt you in the past, anything that has happened due to the culture of Berkeley Heights Public Schools. I completely apologize to you as a student body, to our parents, to the entire community.
Thank you, Dr. Varley.
And Jace, I feel the same way. I'm devastated listening to these stories. I see you, I hear you, and I'm absolutely committed to doing everything I possibly can to make things better in this community.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
very sorry that you had such a horrific high school experience. I'm very, very sorry for your experience. I truly am.
I just hope that nobody ever has to deal with what I had to deal with in middle school.
I hope so too, never again. And I know I speak for every single one of my colleagues on the board. There's
Thank you
just
so
a
much.
lot of voices that need to get heard, which is one of the reasons why we're doing the listening tonight and learning.
Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Jace, thank you very much. Michael LeBlanc.
Just to kind of go back earlier from comments on Dr. Varley, in my interactions with her, she's been quite professional in reaching out. When I got in contact about school closures and the system, she got back to me well within 24 hours, as did Mr. Reinstein, who reached out to me on the weekends about my concerns with the school district. So again, my experience with the school district has been very positive regarding outreach to individuals. So again, that was my experiences. To the students who've been, I'll call the term victims in the past, it's difficult to understand that if you were not a victim of those things. I'm not originally from this area. I'm originally from New York City. So my past experience with the district here is the last 6 years when my kids have been in school since first grade. So I don't have a lot of background. So I'm learning about these things as we go forward. But unfortunately, there's something that must be kind of seen with the school districts and government as a whole. Bureaucracy is slow to change and slow to adapt, and it will take time to get these things to change. And I'm not defending what happened in the past. I don't know a lot about it personally or in that regard, but I do appreciate that the district is working hard to resolve these issues, that they're working with diligence and efficiency to resolve these problems, because they're not going to go away by themselves, and they do need to be drawn with appropriate attention. I do have one other idea for the lunch situation. Perhaps in warmer weather, you could do outdoor dining as a solution for your cafeteria situation.
Michael, thank you very much. Anjali, good evening, welcome.
Thank you, Doug. For those of you who don't know me, I feel like GL is my family. As a former parent, as a GL PTO president, I have worked with most of the administration and the board members. I really did not plan to speak here tonight, but in hearing all these young students, I have to say, I have to commend them. I really applaud them for their bravery in coming forward. It's not easy. It's very difficult to talk about these things, very uncomfortable. But in listening to some of them, one of the things that occurred to me, I think I heard somebody talk about this, and I actually work in this space right now, so I think I felt the need to speak up. In terms of sex education, they're talking about senior class sex education. And honestly, like, who in this space does not believe that senior class is too late to be talking to these issues, right? I mean, these are issues that we should be tackled way before then. So I work in this space right now. We work with the Department of Education, hoping to change, our curriculums. And I work with a lot of national experts. And there were two things that occurred to me. So one was, how do we change our actual sex education curriculum to make it more inclusive truly? Because really, some of the topics that we're talking about, whether it's gender identity, even like really truly sex ed, should be done much earlier than it is in schools like GL. And then the other thing is that in the sex ed space, and also I work with universities in the sexual harassment and assault space. We talk about, consent-based curriculums, and consent-based curriculums being taught as early as kindergarten. And I think maybe what we also need here is a respect-based curriculum. So if we actually started to center the idea of respect, respect for differences, respect for all kinds of people throughout our curriculum, starting from kindergarten, I think that would counter a lot of these things. I acknowledge, as I've heard some of the other people do before, that we don't exist in a vacuum. So obviously there are outside influences that the school district cannot control. But I think in the school, if they're getting a true respect-based curriculum, it would counter some of that. So just my 2 cents to offer. I really think we need to think about those two things. Thank you.
Anjali, thank you very much for your comments. Allie Silverman. Allie, good evening. Oh. Hold on, Allie. I'm going to unmute you again.
Sorry, I was still muted. Thank you everyone for listening. I honestly did not intend on speaking, but I just wanted to share my thoughts. I actually head diversity and inclusion at a large financial institution, so I have a lot of experience in this place. All I really wanted to say, and first and foremost, thank you all for listening to this. I mean, it is a good first step that you guys are listening and willing to hear these stories. The thing that I urge you guys to acknowledge is that this is life and death. Like, this is changing people's lives for the rest of their lives if they make it through this scenario. These are young kids who are very, very easily influenced, and we have seen scenarios where kids are not making it out of this situation. And, you guys gave scenarios of student-led clubs as that is a bottom-up approach. Like, this needs to be top-down approach. Like, this should be treated with the severity of the coronavirus, because people this is just life-altering. And, I appreciate that you guys are willing to listen to scenarios of what is happening, but a lot of students have seen things from faculty. And I mean, like, there are just so many scenarios of things not going well. And I think you guys need to really come up with a very, very severe plan to acknowledge that, because I think you're not going to see the people coming forward that you expect to, because they're afraid to. And I think just when you look at all of the stories of people that have come forward, this is not we're doing things behind the scenes that are going to take time. This is we need to do a complete overhaul and rethink everything that we have been doing. And, Dr. Varley, I know you just came into the role about a year and a half. I came into the role for D&I at my company about 4 months ago, and I think I've made significantly more changes than this administration has. And that is not even just to speak on you, that is just to speak on the amount that you need to put towards something like this. And I don't think people have acknowledged how important this is. And, you know, there are some really awesome teachers at Governor Livingston and the schools below it, but I think right now for some students that is overshadowed by how severe this is. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening, but just wanted to encourage that.
Ali, thank you very much for your comments. Isha Malhotra, you're up next. Isha, good evening.
Oh, thanks. I was muted. I was told that there was feedback before when I unmuted earlier. So
No worries. Good evening. Welcome.
thank you for having me and for holding this forum. My name is Isha Mirotra, and I'm a past GL alum from the class of 2015. I think at this point, all of us are aware of the hundreds of stories that past and present students have come forward with over the past week or so. This clearly demonstrates a pattern of toxic behavior and silent condonement at GL and the entire school system by extension. It's clear that we need accountability. These issues have obviously not been solved in the past through purely administrative action, and the solution to this is full transparency and accountability. I would like to see the district set clear objectives and deadlines for making headway into improving the environment at our schools. It's clear that the actions taken in the past have not worked or are not enough. Citing student groups working on DEI initiatives is not enough. It's not on the students to take initiative to repair the behaviors of other students and staff members. It is the duty of the school district to take ownership of this. The trainings are a great starting point, but it cannot end there. It's very easy to ignore a couple of trainings, but we need a continued focus on this issue. In addition, we need a two-way communication channel to provide feedback and input into the process to ensure that our voices are heard. The first step is to hold a more formal grievance session to hear specific stories rather than actions to take from current students and alums. A one-way anonymous form is not enough to guarantee accountability. This cannot solely be managed internally, so I would like to echo the earlier ask that the district form a dedicated working group with community representation to ensure all issues are investigated and addressed, but also that the appropriate future steps are taken to remedy the toxic culture prevalent throughout the district. Thank you.
Isha, thank you very much for your comments this evening. Amy Sherman. Amy, good evening.
Hi, I'm Amy Sherman. I graduated last year from GL. I just wanted to make a suggestion and just talk about mental health resources. I am personally someone who struggles with mental health. I have depression, anxiety, that sort of thing. And, you know, that was apparent in middle and high school. So one thing that my college offers, and I'm pretty sure a lot of colleges offer it, are free counseling services. And I know that that obviously is not something that can like come about right away, but I think that offering, you know, more than just the guidance counselors, having an actual counselor that people can talk to about mental health issues is a really important thing, as well as maybe even in like health classes, just more mental health awareness, because I feel like a lot of people don't feel heard with their mental health issues. And I think it is something that is really important. So that was all. Thank you so much.
Amy, thank you very much for your suggestion. Andrea Cifelli. Andrea, good evening. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm a current junior at Governor Livingston, and I actually didn't plan to ask any questions during this meeting, but I really feel inclined to, after listening to the other questions and responses, to ask this very straightforward question that I feel everyone else would probably like to know. What I would like to know and be assured by the board is exactly how does the board plan to confront the issues that have been brought to light today in the future, given the significance that was just so well described as life or death by Ali Silverman? Like things like gender neutral bathrooms, cases of bullying being ignored, staff displaying discriminatory or obscene behavior, things like that. I would like to know exactly what a future plan is, or a future action plan that can be put in place, or even ideas, like spitballing ideas. Like I would just like to know what the future is instead of focusing on past things that have been done. I know that those are significant. I know that those are very, very well done and well created, and they're going to create a lot of improvement. And I know that you guys have been working very hard, but what everyone is looking for, I feel, is the future instead of focusing on the past.
So I don't know if Doug, you want to answer that since it's a board question, or do you want me to answer it?
You can start and then I'll add to your comments.
So I will tell you that intolerance is not tolerated under me. I believe we are an inclusive environment of all students. It has been part of our goals. It's part of our new mission statement that we adopted at the end of last year. And moving forward, I can assure you that we will not allow these behaviors to continue. We are an inclusive district, and we will, partnering with our community and partnering with the board as well as the staff, making sure that you all feel safe. Yes.
I would add a couple of things. So as a board in our oversight role, we are absolutely committed to making sure that our administration has every resource, every tool they need to address whatever these items that come up. You also mentioned something that's a little bit more tactical, like a gender neutral bathroom. So I've heard that come up several times this evening, and that's something obviously we will need to take under immediate undertaking. Obviously, a bathroom can't get built overnight, but several people have mentioned that as an obstacle to they feel the safety in their school. So I would say that we have to look at the different ones. Fixing the culture, as Dr. Varley said, is something that happens over time. But I can tell you that from the board standpoint, that anything that is brought to our attention, whether that's brought to a teacher, a parent, a confidant, an administrator, directly to the superintendent, to a board member, every single one of them will be acted upon, and acted upon with urgency. We have had a couple that have come our way even this year, and I can assure you that Dr. Varley and team have acted on those urgently. What it appears is that there are a lot that have not been over time. So that's an area for us to obviously improve. The other thing is, a couple of people mentioned that this was a good listening session. To me, this is only the beginning. There is a lot more that we have to do. Listening is part one, or maybe part 1A. We need to make sure that what we do is action and has results. And if it's a way that we can even measure this, would be even better. Next up is, I'm sorry, Andrea, I'll hold on a second, Andrea. I'll give you a chance to respond. Go ahead, Andrea.
Okay, I have a couple more things to say. Is there anything, first of all, like specific that that's like a very broad statement. Like, is there anything specific that will be discussed or like actually talked about in terms of a real concrete plan to stop this? First of all. And second of all, I have another question from Brianna Kagan, who said, does anyone like that is a staff member know what it is like to be afraid to go to school?
I don't know that Dr. Varley or I could answer a question on behalf of a staff member, so I don't know that we could answer that question. In terms of the first part of your question, in terms of an action plan, part of the action plan is we will take action on anything that comes our way. So we will, I think Mr. Nixon has said that whether it comes to us directly or comes to anonymously, we will take something, we'll take action on every single thing that comes our way. I believe next up was Nishka. Nishka, good evening.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to speak. And I was also just want to say thank you to everyone who has spoken currently. So growing up, I graduated from GL class of 2020, and I'm Asian and specifically Indian. So growing up, I have in some ways felt a little bit of an outsider, and I do want to know what the plan is to start implementing programs at like a younger age, even as early as like first graders, because I think that I can't really isolate that to just GL specifically. That's definitely something that's like built up over time with confidence related issues. And also when you're younger, like you can't articulate things the way you do now. So I think that something needs to be done constructively for like the younger grades, so that way it doesn't like progress and develop over time.
I'll let Dr. Varley add to this, but we have certainly started a number of our programs at the elementary school. When we talked about improving our diversity and inclusive curriculum, we didn't talk about just doing it for the history program at GL. We've talked about putting it in across all the levels and all the grades with different programs, both curricular type programs as well as programs within the schools. And it will take time, but I can tell you that we agree with you. It's not something we can just begin to introduce when someone gets to GL and you're 14 or 15 years old. We firmly believe, in fact, and to the question about have we taken any action, so we have hired a new director of K-5 instruction and intervention. Many of you have been on previous meetings before, have met Mary Beth Kopaz, and her sole mission is to look at and address the curriculum and intervention that we have in our K-5 program. So we have taken an action. It has just begun. She's a first-year employee, but that is one of the main focuses of her job, is to address that.
Absolutely. And she is currently working on the LGBTQ+ curriculum for starting in 5th grade.
Great. Next up is Ahmad. Is it Ahmad or Imad? I'm sorry if I got your name incorrect.
Yeah, no worries. It's Ahmad Haddad. Thank you, Mr. Einstein, and thank you for the opportunity to address the board. By way of introduction, again, my name is Ahmad Haddad. I'm the father of a 2nd grader at Mountain Park, but also a healthcare professional with a doctorate in clinical pharmacy. Early in my career, trained with some of the top epidemiologists, and managed several illness outbreaks, including the training around SARS, if you remember, back in 2002, and the bioterrorism preparedness and surveillance programs for the state of New Jersey. And although I've diverted from that field, I keep close contact with a lot of my colleagues, and I do want to commend the board for the decision to delay in-person instruction in the beginning of January. But I do also want to express my concern with the timing of resorting to Plan A, especially for our 1st to 5th graders. When you look at where we are in this 2nd wave, where we have not hit peak yet, although there have been reports today that R0 has come down less than 1 the first time in 2 months, so that's great news. But if history is any indicator of what the future will hold, we saw a spike after Halloween. We saw the spike after Thanksgiving. We can rest assured, and I think expect to see a spike after the Christmas and New Year's. So to echo a lot of the concerns that have been raised in the past, but also to put the medical and scientific and surveillance perspective on this. It will be a while till we see an uptick in cases. And although I could not agree more with the importance of in-person learning and how we all want to achieve that state as soon as possible. If I'm given the opportunity of half the time with in-person, I think that is a better option than having to resort back and retract and regress into a all remote option that will be imposed on us as a whole. And just to also bring up a publication that came out today on NJ.com, reporting in the state of New Jersey, 428 cases of documented in-school transmission. These are not students that have been that have contracted the disease, but those that have been documented in school transmissions. And I'm here for the community and really want what's best for our kids. And just again, based on the timing, based on what we anticipate, I'm very anxious to go to all in person. But based on past experience, based on what we've seen in the data, and the trends that we anticipate in the next several weeks, again, I just wanted to express my concern and would ask that the board would consider delaying moving to Plan A. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for your comments this evening. Caitlin Escott. Caitlin, good evening.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Escott, and I graduated from GL last year, class of 2020. And I've struggled with mental health throughout my entire life, but some of the worst of it actually occurred in middle school. So when I was in middle school, there were basically no resources for me when I was struggling that I was really made aware of during my time there. And really the only resource I had was my guidance counselor, which was definitely not enough. I basically just went to her when I was like having a panic attack. And I really didn't have many resources throughout high school either. I kind of just went to the nurse's office, laid down for a little bit. But I really wasn't, I didn't really talk to many people about it. And I just wanted to address the fact that not only high schoolers struggle with mental health and that resources are necessary for all ages, and it should be made a priority just with recent stories that are arising with the LGBTQ community and racism and all of that.
Caitlin, thank you very much. Isabel White.
Hi.
Isabel, good evening. Welcome.
Okay, so I actually have this what I want to say written on my iPad. So would it be okay if I turn my camera off?
It's absolutely fine to do that.
Thank you. My name is Izzy White. I'm a freshman at GL. And firstly, thank you for allowing people this chance for their voice to be heard and for allowing my voice to be heard. I would like to get into the topic of the homophobia at our Berkeley Heights schools regarding the topic of what Alyssa said about staff not reporting incidents regarding homophobia. I myself have been ridiculed for being gay, and there were teachers around. However, the incident was never reported and the instigator was never reprimanded for their actions. Members of the board, I hope you condemn teachers' actions of homophobia against many LGBTQ plus students, past and present. Many students who face incidents like this do not come to staff about it because they fear it might just be swept under the rug. Something my friend wanted to share with me was that they'd like to mention how they are afraid to say anything about their pronouns because they've seen kids be relentlessly bullied for it. I think this in itself goes to show that the staff has not been doing enough to protect the LGBTQ plus students of this school. And I agree with what Ali said about this situation being life or death, and that the decisions you, the board, make influence many students' lives. And I understand that you all are doing your best to make things right and make good changes to this school. But how are we to know that this won't just be a one-time thing and that our stories will not go unheard? Also, another friend of mine who wants to remain anonymous would like me to say this. Also, I feel like often middle school and high school kids' opinions are solidified and made people's behaviors are amplified by other students' bigotry. As other students have probably noted, similar people often grouped together, leading there to be all the LGBTQ plus kids being around each other, and those who hold bigoted opinions also hang out with each other. I've seen over and over bystanding individuals who are indirectly responsible for supporting racist, homophobic, transphobic, and xenophobic behavior. That was what my friend would like me to say. And again, I would like to reiterate the question that how do we as a community know that like this situation will not be swept under the rug and that there will be changes?
So I will answer that. This is something that we have committed to, and making sure that our district is inclusive. And so we will be doing regular updates at public board meetings, as well as we have started distributing our minutes of all of our equity and our action team meetings. And we will continue to do that, to continue to put those out there publicly as well.
Thank you, Dr. Rowley, for all of this. Thank you.
I mean, Dr. Barley, the only thing I would add, and I don't know how the other board members feel about this, but when you say regular updates, I think this is so important that we should have a standing item on our agenda for every single board meeting, and we should be tracking the progress we're making. In terms of, I mean, how you define regular, that's how I would define regular.
Absolutely. I think it should be a standing discussion. Metrics are going to be hard in the beginning, right? Like, we know we do have a diversity survey that we were going to send out, but we have postponed for a little while, that we are working on to send to our parents, to our students, and to our staff members. We also have a survey that our CADA, our elementary principals, are working on, that's good for the younger kids so they can answer questions. So those will be coming out in January. So that's something that we'll also report out on as well.
Great,
yeah,
thank you.
And I know you spoke about this in the beginning, but I do want to highlight the fact that I think it, in terms of our hiring practices, and anybody who's been on these Board of Ed meetings, you know that I have brought this up several times at previous board meetings. I'm a big tone from the top person. I think getting role models into our schools and into our classrooms is very important. So focusing on diverse candidates to fill open teaching position and administration positions is very critical, because when our students are exposed to these kinds of different people, it helps change the culture. It helps move the culture forward faster when we have the right people in the classrooms dealing with our kids, interacting with our kids. So I just think our hiring practices are very, very important. And for those of you who have been on prior board meetings, you know that I have brought this up several times. So for those of you asking about specifics, I think that is something very tangible that we can do. It will take us some time, because teachers have tenure and workforces change over, and it takes time, but I think it has to be a key focus for this board and the district.
Great, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dr. Barley. Yili Wu, and I apologize if I got that name correct. Did I get close?
Yes, it's Yili Wu. So, hi
it.
everyone. I am a former GL student. I graduated in the class of 2014, and I am Asian American. And I could go on and on about the racist remarks that I've heard in my time since moving to Berkeley Heights in 8th grade. And the first thing I want to say is that this level of racism, homophobia, transphobia is not even, it is below average for the nearby area. And it is significantly worse than neighboring towns. I grew up in a very non-diverse place for the majority of my life in Ohio, and I never experienced that as much racism as I have in Berkeley Heights. Before moving to Berkeley Heights, I went to middle school in Milburn, only 15-20 minutes away. I never experienced anything like this before in my life. We're hearing a lot about the school, the district is committed to inclusion, we're committed to diversity, we're going to think about what are the next action steps. One thing that comes to mind is when I was at Governor Livingston, I was part of the student newspaper. The school administration at GL was constantly censoring our articles and wouldn't let us discuss multiple topics that were just beyond happy-go-lucky sports teams results. Anything that we wanted to discuss, I clearly remember we wrote an article about how the Barilla CEO was homophobic, and we put it in the opinions section. And the vice principal at the time said, you cannot post this article. She made so many edits to it. And the fact that the topic of homophobia alone, that had no connection with the school whatsoever, it's some random CEO, no connection with the town whatsoever, was such a taboo issue for us to even write about. If you're censoring your own students, how are your students going to be able to voice different opinions, have these discussions with their classmates, if the top line management, the principal and vice principal, who when I was a student, they're still around, they're the ones shutting things down, the blocking of the free press is like the first line of fascism. And again, we hear so much about, we are so committed to inclusion. I know that Dr. Varley is new to this district and wasn't around when I was a student. What are some of the concrete actions that we can have? Well, here's one idea: create a zero tolerance policy for racism, not just for students, but also teachers that can violate their tenure. Even if teachers have been around for decades, that doesn't mean that they can just, like, in what world can teachers just continue teaching if they're saying racist and homophobic remarks to their own students? And like others have said, people become educators because they love kids. If you hate your own students, why are you teaching, and why should you be protected as an educator? So that is just two concrete steps that I hope that the current administration at GL, who have been around since I was a student, can seriously think about, as well as Dr. Varley to think about putting in place for situations that are reported for not just students making these remarks, but also teachers. Thank you.
Neely, thank you very much. Zoya To. Zoya, good evening.
Hello. Hi. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Varley and the board for hearing us and giving your apology, and also listening to all these incidents, that lay before you, and reading our stories. I know it has probably been very uncomfortable and very heartbreaking to hear all these stories, but your efforts and your words are welcome, and your actions are welcome even more, as we continue to work on this ongoing epidemic. I also want to reiterate something that's been said before. This point has been made, but I really want to make it clear that, student efforts and initiatives cannot be used by the board to take credit for actions done by students that the board hasn't even clearly thrown their full support behind. In the future, since you have clearly upheld this club as an example of diversity initiatives, I think you would be remiss not to throw more resources into this student-led club, and to begin more dialogues, beginning with student-led initiatives, but also more from a systematic standpoint. I also want to bring up the point that Berkeley Heights is an incredibly homogenous town, and it is often not very fondly referred to as Berkeley Whites. Berkeley Heights is 89% white, 8% Asian, 4% Hispanic, and 1% Black. And that kind of racial demographic plays a huge role in how and why much of this discrimination is racially based. The school board obviously doesn't control the racial breakdown of the town, and is obviously not responsible for attitudes of kids that come in to the school with these kind of attitudes. However, they are responsible for educating young people that are in charge of, and making them better, more compassionate members of society. And if the school board is witnesses and is told incidents that relate to homophobia, racism, transphobia, they must do everything in their power to pursue and make sure that the student in question is punished for displaying these attitudes, and that the entire body is taught why these kind of attitudes cannot be acceptable in our society. Student curriculum cannot end on discussion of slavery and the Holocaust. It cannot end at discussing racism as eradicated or just limited to the South. It is not just KKK rallies or cross burnings, because its form is even more malicious and damaging. And when the person doesn't even believe themselves to be racist. I believe that you do have mentioned that you are conducting implicit bias, training for your staff, and I applaud you for that. And I think that that kind of training would also be beneficial for the members of the student body. I think it's also important to address the fact that, because of the demographic, these costumes are primarily white and almost entirely white, and that Berkeley Heights is a racial and economic bubble. I think this fact is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, but I think leaning into this kind of uncomfortable rhetoric and discussion will allow people to be able to express their uncomfortable feelings in a more productive way in forms of discussion instead of, racially based jokes and stereotypes. I think I can speak from experience that a lot of the education that I received, a lot of times I didn't even read about people who look like me unless it was their relation to white Americans. And this kind of tunnel vision education is what creates the kind of learning environment that, encourages minorities to remain silent. Some action items, as you've mentioned, is, hiring more qualified educators of color and initiating more dialogue with other schools that do have a more diverse demographic background. And a last point I would like to make is that, like Amy has said, I think it is more important also to encourage mental health resources, including things like on-site therapy and resources that allow a student to, take time off for themselves, as silly as that may seem. Students are really overworked. I say this as a student who has graduated in 2015, and I know that it has not gotten better because they are given 6 hours of work during school day, 5 hours of work after school, in addition to any kind of extracurricular hours that they must complete in order to be seen as academically competitive. Teenagers are not physiologically meant to be up at 6, 7 a.m. and they're forced to go to sleep often at late hours to just finish work for the day. And this kind of environment sometimes isn't helped by a lot of teachers who have not made learning from who have not made failing students feel welcome for failing to meet the expectations. And this does not extend to all the teachers. I have met many of the wonderful teachers that I have been touched to have met are also on this call, but there are, a lot of other educators who often treat failing students with resentment, and whether or not this is because of pressure put on teachers by the school. But I think this kind of toxic environment from the top down should not be welcome from a student standpoint. I think a lot of people in this call don't think that you care. And, I think this is your opportunity to prove them wrong, that you can really make a change. Thank you.
Zoya, thank you very much for your comment. Phoebe Cook, you're next. Phoebe, are you there, Phoebe? I'm trying to unmute you so you can speak. Okay, we will come back to you. David Urbanky. David, good evening, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. In all honesty, I was not planning on speaking tonight. I wasn't even planning on sharing that post, but here we are. I didn't prepare a statement. I didn't prepare anything that I wanted to say formally because, in all honesty, I wanted to come and I wanted to hear everyone. I wanted to hear everyone out and see what you'd have to say. I didn't want to prepare in advance. But now that I've heard from board members, students, I'd love to chime in on some input. First of all, thank you for listening to all of us, having us all here. My experience was 10 years ago. I started at GL, I believe it was in 2009. I hope I remember correctly. I have a much better memory of when I left, and that was in 2011. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I would like to speak to Mr. Scott McKinney, if he is comfortable. He was principal when I was student at the school, and he has since become vice superintendent, if I believe is it assistant superintendent. So if you're comfortable speaking with me, I'd love to have a conversation. I remember, I also, I hope you've read the stories. There were some specifically mentioning you, yelling at students in the halls, referring to them as, again, there were so many stories. I hope I'm doing my best. I may have words incorrect. I believe you called a student useless. I don't know if you remember this incident particularly. I, for one, remember you breaking my own mother to tears, her coming home after speaking with you. Seeing your face in this meeting today, brought me to chills. I've been shaking. We've discussed a lot what stems from the top, and what you allowed to go on while I was a student at Governor Livingston from these stories is still going on today. You have since been promoted to assistant superintendent. That terrifies me. I have received so many stories about suicide attempts. Many of these stories have discussed faculty intervention, which made things worse. We are talking about lives in a real sense, life or death. I can't stress this enough. I was shocked to hear from 6 current faculty members who wish to remain anonymous. Their stories were horrifying, to say the least. I applaud them for staying with it and staying at the school and trying to make a change. I hope we can see progress. Of course, I want to give Mr. McKinney a chance to respond. It just concerns me that you were you were principal when I was there. You allowed so many of these things to go on, and you are now in a higher position of power. So what do you have to say? And thank you again, everyone, for hearing me out.
I would just offer David, a thank you for sharing your story and bringing a lot of these things to light. This is certainly something that is, concerning. As educators, we're always looking for ways to be better and to do things better. And clearly, that has not been the case. And I welcome the opportunity to speak to you on a one-on-one basis, and would welcome that opportunity so that I could continue to learn. I think that's schools are supposed to educate. Changing people or saying that we need to change people is not our business. We need to educate people so that they can make the best decisions moving forward and be good people. And that has to be our goal. And, unfortunately, I can't go back. As I said, I would welcome the opportunity to speak with you one-on-one and have this conversation. But, just like everybody else says, we need to do better. I need to do better as an individual, and I need to be a better educator. And I think that's, and looking forward, I think that's the key piece to this. It won't happen overnight. But I will take accountability for my actions, and I will get better, and I will, hopefully positively lead people in this district and help them become better and help students moving forward. Again, I appreciate your comments, and if you'd like to connect, we can certainly do so.
Thank you. And I also want to address Dr. Melissa Varley. I know you're new there. You were not there during my time, and I look forward to seeing what actions and changes you make in the district, because it is certainly very overdue. It is very needed, and as I have stressed, lives depend on it. One other thing I would like to say is I've received a lot of messages from a lot of people in the community asking me to say this or that, call people out by name specifically. That is not my place. I just encourage everyone to be a better person and treat everyone with more dignity and respect, and think about what you would want done to yourself or your own children or your own family members. I'm no longer living in the community, and I hope that people who are current community members can really learn from this and listen to these stories. So thank you again for having me.
David, thank you very much. It's really great to see you this evening. Obviously, the courage that you had to make your comments public. The wealth and the quantity of the stories that have come from this is truly alarming to people in the community, to people in the school system. The depth of change that we need to make as a school district is significant. And the suggestions that you have and that some of the current students have had give us reason to take some of the actions that people are requesting. What you did is not easy. What you did obviously struck an enormous chord, a very painful chord in our school ecosystem. And I'm hopeful that with your comments, your initial post, and the passion that we have that is brought out in people, that we can do better. We have to do better. This is an unacceptable level of performance in our community. And you asked, one of the previous persons asked Dr. Varley to apologize. I will tell you, in my role as leading this Board of Education, I do truly apologize. I am horrified by, and I took the opportunity to read all the stories that were posted in the last several days, as well as the hundreds and hundreds of comments that were on there, as well as on other social media
I've
platforms.
actually received 8 since this meeting began that I have not read yet. So I do encourage you all to continue reading them, because they are still coming and people are still building up the courage to speak. And I want to offer the platform to anyone who wants to share their stories. So if you have the time, please continue to check.
And I can tell you that I, along with others, I'm not the only person who has done this. Dr. Varley talked about, herself and Mr. Nixon have done that. And more, probably more importantly, is what are the actions we are taking? A number of the speakers tonight have asked about what actions we are taking. And I've heard some that we can take, some more, a little bit more tactical, like, can we fix a bathroom? Can we implement training? Can we continue to do training? Those are a little bit easier to be done, that we can do in a more short order. But we have a long-term problem to fix. It's culture-based. It's within our faculty. It's within our student population. It's within our parent population. There were many comments about that if this is allowed at home, it's no surprise that it's allowed in the schools. So we have a pervasive problem that we need to address. Again, some things can be done more short-term, and some can be done more long-term. So again, on behalf of the board that I think I'm speaking for, there were probably as much as 480 people on this meeting before you have our heartfelt thanks for bringing this to our attention. So thank you.
And my last comment is I do want to express concerns about how the majority of the messages are stories specifically about faculty members. That is something that really should be taken into account.
Great. Thank you again, David. Again, thank you. Phoebe Cook, are you still on? I'm trying to unmute you so you can speak. Are you there, Phoebe? Not seeing that. I will move on. Lucy Dawson. Lucy, good evening.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucy. I graduated in 2011 from GL. I was in Berkeley Heights schools from 2nd grade to 12th grade. I, like David, no longer live in the school, but as someone who grew up Black in a majority white town, thought I would give my 2 cents. I first want to thank David again for sharing his story and giving us all the space to share ours as well. It's heartening to hear that you have DE&I initiatives ongoing in the schools, but I'd like to know, when you talk about implicit bias training and like changes to the curriculum, are you talking about one-off presentations or classes that people can opt into, or are you talking about addressing the entire curriculum for all classes?
So we will address the entire curriculum. It does take time to do so. But we have made a commitment. The diversity, equity, and inclusion committees have been meeting to discuss curriculum, how we're making changes, and ensuring that we are getting the voices of all of our community involved in making these changes, while still following the mandated the standards we still have to follow. The training will be ongoing. The DEI training is not something we will ever let go. It is something that is going to be consistent throughout from here till forever, because it is something that is extremely important to me. It's important to the board. It's important to our administrative team to ensure that we have a faculty, we have students and staff members who are inclusive of everyone.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Because when I think back on what I learned growing up, and of course I can't remember specific classes or lessons, but I don't know, when you think about American history, and I'm only speaking about Black history because that's what I know best, I feel like we were taught that slavery was bad and civil rights was good, and then everything was fine. And I think that's leaving it there is a big problem. And I think addressing that with kids starting at a very young age will hopefully help the culture change a little bit. Yeah, I can say I had to unlearn a lot of things and relearn a lot of things after leaving Berkeley Heights and moving to Philly. And I think, that you can do better for future generations. So thank you for your time.
We're committed to doing better.
Lucy, thank you very much. Chrissy Hens. Chrissy, good evening.
Hi. So I think I offer a little bit of a different perspective. I am a parent and a member of the community, and also part of the PTO over at Mary Kay McMillan, because it's where my children go. So first of all, I'd like to begin by thanking Dr. Varley and the board for all the plans that you're putting in place and for your well intentions in this matter and for listening. I'd also like to commend the bravery of the young adults, former and current students who have spoken out at this meeting. You truly are the change that Berkeley Heights needs, and I'm truly sorry that you went through that when it could have been avoided with just a little bit of awareness. Being said, I have young children, and I wanted to take the moment to speak out about the bigotry and hatred that I read recently in regards to this town. I know some of these things have been said, but I believe that this is coming from a different perspective, and I just think it should be reiterated. I've lived here for 4 years. We moved here. I grew up in Morris County, also in a small town with not a lot of diversity in the 90s, and I didn't see anything to this level at my own high school. And we moved here because I heard the schools were great and that it was a nice town. So you can see that how truly shocked and appalled I was about reading these experiences on Instagram. I'll admit I didn't even read them all because it was difficult to get through. And I have to be honest and say that in the moment, I was filled with regret. And I think many other mothers of young children who also grew up in other towns, who moved here, have said the same thing to me in recent days. Did I pick the wrong town to raise my children in? Does this town uphold the standards that I teach my children about love and tolerance? Will my own children be afraid to go to school? These are just a few of the thoughts that ran through my head when I was reading David's post. And I really believe that no child should be afraid to go to school, and the school should be a safe place where children learn and grow as individuals in whatever direction it takes them. This is truly appalling. It's despicable. I mean, what are we doing to our children? I believe that change needs to happen in a wide scale, not just in the schools. After all, bigotry and intolerance does start at home. However, the school is the best place to start because educational institutions, after all, should be held to a higher standard. The schools need to have a concrete plan to address this issue, and staff needs to be explicitly trained on how to handle situations of intolerance. I do believe that you've spoken a lot about these changes tonight, and I do hope that we can look back in the future and this can just be a period of growth. And I hope that you're genuine, because my kids are little, and about 8-9 years from now, they'll be at Governor Livingston too. And I want it to be a safe place for them. And I just want to know that since you're committed to this change, I want you to know that we're going to be watching. I think we're going to have our eyes on this the next coming years. And I know I'm just a new member of the community, but I wanted to make sure that my voice was heard. And I hope that the healing begins tonight. It does sound very promising. And finally, just to make one point about the reopening and COVID. Dr. Varley, I appreciate all your hard work and what you're doing to keep everybody safe during this pandemic. I'm actually a teacher in another district, and I won't comment, but they're not doing nearly as much. However, I do believe that we should consider delaying the reopening of schools to keep the staff and students safe, and then maybe moving to plan A would not be best at this time. Perhaps we can reevaluate it in a few weeks once we know what the numbers are. And I think the epidemiologist who spoke on here actually even convinced me further that it's not the best idea. So I mean that's about it. But I applaud David for having the strength to speak out, and for everybody else who did too. And I just hope that it gets better for all the kids in this town. And I want to be proud to say that my kids live here in Berkeley Heights, and I want them to feel that way too. Thank you for your time.
Chrissy, thank you very much for speaking tonight. Peyton Buckley. Peyton, good evening. Hold on, Peyton. Oh, hold on. Let me just unmute you. Let me just hold on a second, Peyton. Okay, now you're good.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Welcome. Good evening.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Varley and the board. I really appreciate having this opportunity to speak. My name is Peyton Buckley, and I am a current freshman at GL. I would just like to mention that these changes start with the parents and community as a whole, not just the administration. The extent of this problem has been reiterated by both current and former students. And to see progress, we as a community need to be taking proactive measures and not just have these discussions in response to individual situations and events. Things are only going to get better if education happens early and in mainstream classes. And in the community, I implore you to teach your children to be an ally and to prevent these issues in the future. As these before me have stated, even if a child is disciplined for hateful actions within the school, these actions will still persist without the support of parents within the community. So thank you so much for hearing me. Us students at GL are very eager to help foster change with this in the school. We just need the support of administration and parents to see it through.
Peyton, thank you very much. I'll go to, I don't know if it's Toya or Damian Facey who is speaking.
Hi. We don't know which one is to speak either, because we weren't planning to speak.
It's both of you.
It's both of us. We're together.
Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I guess where I'll start first is I first want to say I'm sorry to the students who shared their stories, both present and former GL alum who indicated their experience at Governor Livingston. I was in an earlier conversation just kind of talking about it, and my reaction to that is, as parents, as adults, how did we let that happen? They looked to us to be the protector, and we failed them as a community. And I sincerely apologize to you guys that we were just unaware. I think what I heard from some of the stories, I mean, I think Damien and I can both attest to, we have our own experiences starting with bias at Mary Kay McMillan. Our son has gone through incidents as well at the middle school, in which he decided at the age of 13 that he was not going to GL. But we thought that our experience was just our experience by itself. So to hear how pervasive this is frightening for us as parents. The one thing that I would like to applaud the Board of Education and also Dr. Varley. I know that you're new to this and you kind of inherited where we are today, and it truly is a culture that we have to change. But I am very happy to see kind of the meaningful progress that's been taken in the schools around the diversity, education, and inclusion committees. I think that's a great step. I know I had sent you an email and just said, I think that one of the other steps is, you know, how do we measure progress, right? It's one thing to have these committees in place, but, you know, how do we make sure that what we're doing is the right thing? So I encourage us to ensure that we have some measurable goals on each of those committees and we're holding ourselves accountable. I think for the Board of Education, we elect you guys every 3 years, I think. And I'm also holding you guys accountable as well, because I do think that you guys really need to understand what the culture is in the school. That is part of your mandate. And I know that we're doing a survey, but my encouragement is for us to ensure that the survey is done on an annual basis and we're seeing the progress made year to year. You guys own this too. It's just not on the hands and on the heads of the administration. You're elected to represent us as parents. And so I'm also holding each of you guys accountable to ensure that you know what is happening in our schools and you know what the environment and the atmosphere is like for students, and real questions on that survey. Questions where we're really trying to get the feedback from the students. The other thing is, I know that there's been a lot of recommendations in terms of things that we can do. And what I would encourage us is not for us to be knee-jerk in terms of the solutions that we put forth. I think it's very important that if we want to enact change and we want to change a culture, that it is something that's sustainable and that we're not redundant, that we understand what has been in place, where the gaps are, and what we implement is something that is sustainable. And I encourage us to make sure we don't want any knee-jerk reactions, because those fall apart very quickly. And then the last thing, and I think a lot of people have kind of commented on this as well, is the school is one aspect of it. There's a community issue as well. And Doug, I think you mentioned this as well. It starts with our community, and it's not a change just in the school, it's a change in the community. So I encourage everyone who's on the call. This also belongs to us. It belongs to me as a parent. It belongs to my neighbor. We have to change the culture in the community. The school is just one piece of it. It's not the entire issue. So I encourage us to try to make a change as a community as well.
And, you know, I just want to extend deepest appreciation as well to just everyone for letting their voices be heard in an authentic way. The only thing that I'll add on is that it's a full court press, you know, and it's very important that we don't get hung up on prescription, and this is the right way to do something. There is a system, but there's also just general hope and trust in each other, and really engaging and giving to one another in a real neighborly way. And so this starts and ends at home, but it extends into our communities and schools. So don't wait. Try to make something happen just across the board for everyone, because giving is where it starts.
Great. Toya, Damien, both thank you. As some people know, we as a district are partnering with the Berkeley Heights Diversity Council that Toya and Damien are a part of. That's been going on for several years since they've started that. And we are actively working to, you know, as just one element, one leg of this multi-part stool that we need to work on, is to work with the diversity committee. We had a listening session that they sponsored for us in November. Some good things came out of that. And as we've heard tonight, there's many, many changes that we have. So one listening session clearly is not going to fix things, but again, we are committed to do that. Toya, I'll make one comment that you said you have to hold people accountable. We couldn't agree with you more. And there has to be accountability up and down the spectrum, from the top, which starts with the board, to the administration, to the teachers in the classroom, to the supervisors, to holding our students accountable, to holding the bystanders accountable, the people who witness what's happened. So it's not just the victim of the incident, it's the bystanders who stand by and don't say anything about that, to, as you mentioned, the parents and the entire communities. There's no one easy fix to this. It's not something we'll fix solely within the school system. It is a community-wide challenge that we have. And I know that there's a lot of people on this call, yourselves included. In fact, anybody who's staying with us, with 350 people still staying with us at 10:25 at night, I suspect are committed to working with us. So I am encouraged that there's a lot of people who want to fix this. It is up to us to define, design, and implement the changes that need to occur, but we need support of the whole community. So thank you to both of you for your comments and for your partnership and all that you've done to help improve diversity. I'll go next to Emily. Emily, you can speak. Emily, just before you speak, I just need your last name.
My last name is Smith. Can you hear me?
It is Emily Smith. Great. Emily, good evening.
Hi. I want to thank everyone for staying on for this long. I know it's pretty late. I'm usually well
Emily,
I know, but I did great.
Emily, can you hold on a
Junior
second?
year, I couldn't be in it. Oh,
Emily,
yeah.
Emily,
Yes.
we're having trouble hearing you. Why don't you go off video? Maybe it's the
Okay.
video slowing down, and start again, because we really couldn't hear you. So start again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you perfectly. Great.
Okay, perfect. So I want to just thank everyone for being on the call for this long. I know it's really late. I'd like to say that I'm I graduated from GL in 2014, but I didn't make it through all of Governor Livingston. I transferred out my junior year when I couldn't deal with being in the school system anymore. You can ask my mom, she's on this call. I spent my entire junior year summer begging her to not make me go back. And I don't think she really understood the gravity of the situation until I literally wouldn't leave our house. I'm like, I'm not doing it. And so we kind of panicked and found a boarding school for me to go away to my senior year because I couldn't be there anymore. I just think back to the many times that incidents happened at GL and at Columbia and the way that the administration reacted to it. So various suicides that happened. I think 3 or 4 suicides happened between the time that I entered and left GL. And that's just high school. That was just 3 years. And every single time we got the same email from the administration. We're really devastated to hear about this. If you need help, please talk to the counselors. And then it was just everything moved on as if nothing happened, as if we didn't lose a life. We didn't lose, I mean, that should have been the first time that happened, that should have been a show-stopping moment. Like, we need to reevaluate how we're acting as a school and a community. If someone at this young of an age wants to take their own life because of what's going on in their day-to-day life, like, there's a huge issue there. And I think not addressing it gave a message to the rest of us, like, your mental health does not matter to us. We just need to pass you through here until we have to keep the kids going through to get them out of here. And so as someone who suffers from anxiety and depression and never learned about it in school because it's not part of our curriculum, I'm thinking there's something wrong with me and that I can't share my own story because kids kill themselves and it's not a big deal to the administration. And I think about how I grew up. I'm Jewish, but when I grew up through the school system, I would tell people that I was half Jewish because I didn't want to face the anti-Semitism. There were kids in my grade telling me to stay away from ovens because I was Jewish, throwing quarters at my friends because they're cheap Jews. Things that I didn't even know were an issue because that's not something that I would ever think to have to deal with in the years that I was growing up and going to the public schools in Berkeley Heights. And so I think back to even when we were younger, when I was in Woodruff School for elementary school, we had a holiday assembly and every grade talked about a different holiday, and Christmas was 2 of those grades. So it's just like showing how we try to preach that we're diverse and we're showing how we're accepting all these people. We only accept certain people. We don't really go the full way to show that we're inclusive of everybody. We don't go outside of our bubble. And I think we've talked about this a lot on this call tonight, but I do think it's really important to think about how right now Berkeley Heights is a very reactive community. We have to stop being so reactive. You have to start being proactive. Start putting in curriculum changes in 2nd grade, talking about LGBTQ. Then I don't want to learn about it when I'm in 9th grade, when it's too late and I'm too afraid to share who I am as a person. It has to be from the youngest age, so kids grow up and all of this is normal to them and it's part of their lives. You wouldn't have a fire drill while the building is on fire. You have to teach people about it before it happens. Otherwise, again, Allie said this before, it's life or death, and you don't want to have to teach it to people after they've already taken their own lives. And I feel like I'm just speaking with so much emotion because I'm just so angry at how little has been done. I left GL in 2013, and the fact that kids right now, 7 years later, are saying that nothing has changed, how has it been this long that nothing has changed? I'm done with hearing the administration say, we're going to think about doing this. We're going to consider this. Stop considering, make a plan now and share the plan now, share it with the community, ask for advice, ask for feedback, say, does this work for everybody? And you need concrete plans, changes in curriculum, changes in staff, whatever the changes you have to make, you need to get them done now. I don't want to hear about, well, next year we'll try this, or we're going to think about it. Like, I need someone to tell me that you're going to change something now. And that's all. Thank you for letting me speak.
Emily, thank you very much for speaking. Olga Brashnikova.
Yes, hi, thank you. I hope it's okay that my camera's off. I just wrote out what I wanted to say on my iPad.
That's okay. Welcome. Good evening.
Okay, thank you for letting us speak on this issue. This is a very serious problem. I went to Deerfield Middle School and I'm now a freshman at GL. Many of my friends have been bullied to the point where they did very harmful things to themselves, such as attempting suicide. As to the kids that did the bullying, they did not get more than a slap on the wrist. What I want to see in our district is a change in the way the students and teachers are educated. All the students and teachers should be taught the effects of and wrongs of saying slurs and bullying. This could be as simple as having self-development days at school to teach everyone about how to be more respectful and including to all people, or by having assemblies and educating everyone about the effects of bullying on students. This is not happening right now, and I really hope to see this change soon. As it was said, this is a situation of life and death and shouldn't be quickly dismissed. Changes should be made now, not thought about. Thank you.
Olga, thank you very much. Phoebe Cook, I want to try one more time. If you're there, I see you have your hand raised. I want and see if you're available to speak. If not, I will lower your hand. Maybe you put it up before. Phoebe Cook, are you there? You are not. I will keep going. Arden Zhao.
Good evening.
Arden, good evening. Welcome.
So my name is Arden. I'm a part of the LGBTQ+ community, and I'm Asian. I'm in 8th grade, and I want to speak out on behalf of the students in the middle school and the middle school diversity committee. Like many others, I didn't plan to talk today. I even asked a friend of mine to talk for me earlier, so thank you, Izzy. I wanted to add on to the topic of teachers' roles in this. Over the past few days, many of my teachers have assured us that we are safe in their classroom, and I do believe that we are. However, I wanted to mention a statement that stood out to me during class. A teacher mentioned to me that they are willing and reported bigoted behavior and wanted us to know that while they will take individual action, many of them have reported and they say that the reports end at them. I personally have never had homophobic or transphobic language directed towards me from a teacher nor a student, but I have had many friends who had not been so lucky. I had a friend who would like to stay anonymous, who had been called the F slur multiple times and was told to hang themselves. I have multiple friends who have depression, anxiety, and even are suicidal. I've had friends whose very names have been used as inside jokes, and I have myself has had my personal space violated again and again with students I'm not comfortable with putting their hands on me without my consent, and even after I've told them to stop. This was addressed before, but both teacher and student voices must be heard by higher ups. I also want to talk about my own experiences from elementary school and middle school. I'm not out and most likely will not be out for a long time in the future, so I cannot speak for LGBTQ+ targeted bigotry in the school from a personal perspective. As an Asian American, I've had many instances of racism directed at me all the way from around 4th, 5th grade. Our school district is very white, so there's always that disconnect from other students when it comes to culture and just fitting in. What I wanted to focus on was that this is happening from such a young age. Kids learn to respect others by being shown respect themselves, and they learn their behaviors young, whether it be from an environment they're around or from family. I wanted to bring up that children should be taught and learn in an environment that is strictly inclusive to combat bigoted behavior. So I wanted to talk about how a bunch of this should be talked to, and it shouldn't be just directed to the high school and even the middle school. I feel like a lot of kids, by the time they reach middle school, their opinions are already solidified and they're already starting their bigoted behavior. So I wanted to like tackle this while they're still young in elementary school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Arden, for sharing your thoughts this evening. John Miguez. John, good evening.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me or letting me speak. I wasn't able to get what everybody or caught what everybody had to say, and I was able to catch pieces of it here and there. And I was pretty impressed with a lot of the students coming up and kind of sharing their stories. One idea that I'm going to share, and there's a lot to process, there's a lot of ideas, some I really agree with. Two things, for me, I think the first thing is to not react and not act with immediacy. I do think the community has to think through very carefully what it's going to do, get buy-in. I think communities and districts have made some big mistakes in reacting quickly without evidence. And I think it's important to vet whatever solution we have to make sure it connects to the problem and it's worked. But the one idea I'd like to throw out there is a 360. I'm a big advocate of students and parents being able to inform performance evaluations of teachers, staff, administrators. And I know that's a complicated thing, but I think that's one really quick pathway to ensuring change. So if we're talking about culture and making sure culture is open, accountable, and accepting, having students and parents being able to provide feedback directly in ways that are meaningful and impactful will go a long way in not only, in my opinion, not only initiating change, but making sure it's sustained beyond a program or beyond a set of programs or initiatives. That's the only thing I'd like to share tonight.
Great, John. Thank you very much. There's a person who's logged in as iPhone who has their hand raised. So I will unmute you. I just need you to share your name.
Is that me?
That's
I
you.
put my name in. I'm sorry, Doug. It's Erin Biddle, Syrup. How are you?
No problem, Erin. Thank you for doing that. Erin, good evening. Thanks for joining.
Good evening, guys. I could say so much. It's just obviously so upsetting. What I really want to give is a different perspective from a parent. I'm a parent that's been here for my daughter's 14. I have an 11-year-old and my 5-year-old. You guys know I'm very involved. I'm on the new diversity committee at CMS. I'm very happy that you have parents in it. One thing I want to mention about it though is I think you're going to have to give the teachers or the principals some guidelines of what they can. I think they're worried about what they can send out, because it was Transgender Week and they asked for some ideas. I wrote up a whole thing of ideas. One of the things that I really wanted to do was speak to parent information going out, a link, maybe even just a link going out, because we do have, several transgender kids in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I know one of them personally. And I just really feel like we need the information to go home. Because it does start with the community, and a lot of these kids are having a severe trouble with their parents. Now, after I sent everything, it was decided that nothing would be sent out because really they were too nervous to start with transgender. And I understand that we are starting something here and we don't want to, we don't want to scare parents, I guess, but I mean, then you gotta have to, if you're making a diversity committee, and then we're not going to start with transgender because we're scared of what the parents are going to say. So while I know that they want to try, they were scared. So nothing was ever sent out for Transgender Week. They did disability, whatever week or whatever. Not that that's not important. My child has, an anxiety disorder. I understand everything that's important, but Transgender Week was completely missed. And I know there's a lot of problems in the community, but I would love to be able to bridge that. Now, with that said, you guys know Sandy Hook Promise. That's what I'm what I volunteer for here. I started working for them. I'm furloughed now because of COVID. But that's another thing. I just want to talk about follow through. Ratner was really into our programs. I know that Varley, I think she really liked our programs when John Leo and I did them this year. We did them at all the elementary schools. All the elementary schools were on board. The middle school's on board too. We did it at the middle school, but the middle school has to follow through with the Save Promise Club. Students Against Violence Everywhere has been around for 30 years. I can't come in for a one-off presentation and expect, maybe I'll change one person's life that day. Maybe one person will hear something. But if you don't have this going through the school and the kids, it's supposed to be student led, and they sign and CMS signed up to do the Save Promise Club. They've never done it. They had to do it to get the person in from Sandy Hook. That was before I was the presenter. So they have to do it, and they still haven't done it. You can say it's worked into something. It's not worked into anything yet. And I sent an email to Mr. McKinney and Dr. Varley. I am at your disposal. You have a Sandy Hook Promise. I'm the Northeast contract trainer here. I will do all this for free. I will do whatever you want, but you have to work with me. The high school also would not work with me. They only let me do 20 kids and do the link team. Mr. Nixon did not want me to take 45 minutes out of his day. They had already done two. He told me they had already done two presentations last year, so they did not have time for our Say Something or Start with Hello. I'm not saying that Sandy Hook Promises programs are going to change everything here, but you do have a group of people here, parents who are trying to help and trying to change in their small ways. And if you don't use us, then I don't know what good any of this is for. Just like I said about the diversity committee, then it's just, oh, you made a diversity committee, but it's not doing anything. So that's what I'm upset about today. And I want to know what you're going to do with our programs. I want to know today, because I seem like we just go off and I don't hear anything. What's happening with Sandy Hook Promises programs?
So, hi, Erin.
Hi.
So, when I got here, Sandy Hook was already involved in the elementary schools. So it's been something, and I know we paused everything once COVID hit, right? We can't put large groups of children like we did at Hughes. We put a large group, when I was there when you and Mr. Leo did your presentation, and we put a large group of kids in a room. We can't do that anymore. So I'm not sure if it has been paused due to that. It's one of those things that and I did read your email. I just haven't gotten around to getting back to you, but it's one of those things that we can discuss on how we're moving forward with Sandy Hook. I will say that we have put most of our assemblies on pause right now due to COVID and not being able to have children in rooms.
Yes, I completely understand that. And just so you know, Sandy Hook Promise has done, unfortunately, it's definitely not as good as someone being able to speak to people, especially in the high school, and get those really great conversations going. But we do have virtual programs that I can send to you that can be used all the way from first grade through 12th. And the Start with Hello program, the inclusion program, there's a great lesson of that for the high school too, for whatever reason, they just, I only did for the link team, the Say Something program, which is about finding a trusted adult, and speaking to them, finding someone that, if anybody is having a problem, from whether it be drug abuse or from, an LGBTQ problem to any an eating disorder, when we talk about all that, and just with everything going on, I just feel like we weren't utilized to the best of our capability. And I'm just concerned, because we're here and we're ready to help. So that's all I want. That's all I really want to get through.
Great, thank you. And we have partnered with you, and you've obviously been a great volunteer in our community. So we'll take that again. I think this is a multi-pronged approach to fix it. Sandy Hook Promise was part of it, and I'm sure we'll come back and revisit it. So thank you for sharing your thoughts.
No problem.
Jimmy Patingolo.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Jimmy, good evening. Welcome. Good to have
Good
you
evening.
back.
Yeah, good to see you all. Thank you all for staying on, and for the 300 and some odd people still on. Appreciate you guys staying on so late. I just wanted to address one thing Dr. Varley had mentioned. I think one thing we have to focus on the future. We're focusing on change. And one thing that Dr. Varley had mentioned was if we don't know about it as a district, what can we do? And I think the only issue with saying that is that we have to remember that in the context of marginalized individuals, the playing field is uneven from the day we're born. There's, marginalized individuals are told that we don't have a voice, and it's really important that we kind of know that a lot of times it's hard for us to come up and say like, oh, I have an issue to speak with authority figures. So I think that when we say, oh, of all the reported cases we're dealing with them, if your metrics if we're not showing up these instances on your metrics, then we need to have a better plan for getting these metrics. If we're saying, oh, we're dealing with all the cases of bullying, obviously that's not the issues. We're not addressing all the issues that are going on in the school. So it's really important just to remember that marginalized individuals it's not on us to bring these issues up. It's on the school board to foster a culture and to investigate and to, kind of find homophobia and racism and xenophobia and attack it, rather than saying, if we don't hear about it, there's nothing we can do. Because I think that it's unfair to, marginalized people to say, if you don't tell us, there's nothing we can do, because we want to show that we're going to do everything for you, even if you don't have a voice, because, historically, all these people, all these groups, we don't have a voice. And I think that's just really something important to remember.
Jimmy, thank you very much for those thoughts. You've invested a lot as a participant on the school board and invested a lot in the GL community. So thank you for joining this evening. I'm going to pause a second right now. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the board? I see Sean Procaccini wants to speak for a second time. I'm going to pause, Sean, and make sure that nobody else wants to speak. We've had a lot of people speak tonight, and I know it is getting late, but not seeing anybody. Sean, I will unmute you and have you give us some final thoughts that you'd like to share.
Right, I'm so sorry. This is just because I got a note from a member of my graduating class of something that she wanted to make clear, and something I forgot to say during my moment. So I'm going to be very quick. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're here to listen tonight, so go ahead.
Yes. So I want to make it clear that truly when we approach these subjects, having a singular point of view in positions of power really is problematic in creating like legitimate lasting change. And what I mean by that is, true change looks like reparations and power sharing. And what I highlighted with my first comment, the first step towards that is sort of to hand over the keys of the kingdom. And there need to be more marginalized people in positions of power in the school district and at the schools themselves, running these things and making sure that they are working the way that they are supposed to be. We need to share our power as white people with more marginalized groups of people. I want to say that it may not be the 2,000 people who signed the petition, and it may not even be as many as the 400 people who are on this call tonight, but a lot of people are going to be paying very close attention to what the district does next and what its next steps are. We will be responsive and we'll be paying very, very close attention. And so, if legitimate change is not made, we are going to notice, and there won't be a long period of time before this becomes a discussion again. And the note that I got from a member of my graduating class is that a lot of us in the community, a lot of us activists have been doing a lot of work these past couple of days. I've focused on this issue as much as I focused on my own teaching job in Hoboken, and it's been very draining, and it's been a lot. And I know that a lot of other activists in the community have been going through the same thing. So we would like to ask for a thank you from the board and the administration. Please thank us, the community, for the labor that we've been doing over the past few days.
Great, thanks, Sean. I think I was clear before about thanking all the people who have come forward to speak tonight. I have a couple of concluding remarks when we're done, but yes, you have a lot of thanks from people this evening. Liz Guzman. Liz, good evening.
Good evening, thank you. I just want to say that tonight has been a tremendous evening, and first and foremost, just in the overall pandemic environment, I think that it's real, the teachers have been doing an amazing job, but even more so, the students. I want to say firsthand that I witnessed students working under enormously difficult conditions, doing so much more, taking tests with less time and sometimes without paper, not being able to print, with shorter amount of time, longer tests, and doing amazing jobs. And so really the stress that not only the teachers are going through, but the students, especially the high school students who have, to worry about college and their grades, there's a lot of pressure. So just want all the students to know that we recognize you, and whether you're an A student, a C student, D student, F student, you are important and valuable. Your grades do not define you. I just want to put that out there first. As far as an action plan, I've heard some great ideas, and I do want to reiterate that the first action on the agenda should be a clear, unequivocal message from the top of the school, superintendent and principal, especially in the high school. A strong statement needs to be stated that any form of bullying, harassment, threats, assaults, bias, intimidation, etc., will be fully investigated and will have serious consequences that will remain with the student. I think a lot of students, again, in the high school in particular, will not want to have any type of record that could jeopardize their college admissions. And it should be zero tolerance. I think additionally, further notification, or I would say reminder to the faculty and all service providers or school employees need to be reminded that they do have a legal duty under the law in New Jersey to report any incident of harassment, intimidation, or bullying. It has to be reported if they witness it, and it has to be reported to the school principal. And I would also tell that to the students and the students' parents out there, that under the law, any of those incidents are witnessed by school faculty or teachers, it must be reported. And finally, I will say there was a great program that I heard about that it was a detective, David D'Amico, that did go speak to students in the Students Activism Club and the current world issues. I know there was a newspaper article that came out, and then the Saga Club. And I think he was one of the first openly gay detectives. He's currently, I think, in the Middlesex prosecutor's office, if I'm not mistaken. But having something like that, someone like him come forward to the full school body, I think obviously programs alone and meetings alone is not enough. But I think sometimes the message is being given to the kids who already know, the people who are active in these types of clubs or environments like the diversity committee or the student activism clubs, but it needs to be open to the full student bodies. And it definitely, the fact that we're all virtual now, this is a whole new world, but meetings are still happening, CLEs are still happening, and they can all be done via Zoom. As you can see, sometimes the attendance is even higher via Zoom. Like, you're not going to get 300 people at a school board meeting on a Monday night, but you'll get them on Zoom. So the same goes for the school, especially if it's required for the students to attend. And then just finally, I just want to say I do work in a law enforcement agency. And if there's any student out there that feels that they are threatened or there has been any form, something that is criminal, harassment, assault, they should contact the police if they feel they cannot go to someone at the school and report it. Thank you.
Liz, thank you very much. Nancy Imbalzano. Nancy, good evening.
Hi. Hey, Doug. And thank you guys for having tonight and for this opportunity. Like everyone else, I wasn't planning on speaking, and I just want to first acknowledge and thank again David and the other kids that spoke. I say kids, and I want to say I'm sorry. I want to say I'm sorry as a parent for knowing that some of these things were happening in the school system. Yeah, I wrote letters to the Board of Ed, and I wrote letters to Judy Ratner, but obviously we didn't do enough. And I'm really, really sorry that we didn't do more and that we're still dealing with this in the school system. And I apologize to you for that. I also want to say, Dr. Varley, I recognize you're new and that you're inheriting a lot of this. But what you heard tonight is you're inheriting an administration and obviously and a Board of Education and as a teacher and faculty that is not new. Some of who were complicit in this, some of whom weren't, some of them weren't aware, some of them like me didn't do enough, might have thought they did enough, didn't do enough, and it's still happening. So what I would suggest too, with everything else that everyone's talking about, is there are methods for reconciliation. I don't think it's enough to just move forward. I think we need healing in this community and in this school system. And I think because you still have the same people there and where people have that history and have those feelings and those emotions, I think we have to get over that. So I would suggest that we look at a type of a reconciliation that happens through apology, happens through acknowledgement, so that people can move forward. I don't think it's as simple as just saying, let's go forward. And I know you're new and you're inheriting it, but I think that's going to be necessary to truly heal this community and this school system. And thank you again for everybody and the bravery that you guys have shared tonight. I'm overwhelmed. I know a lot of you and I'm overwhelmed by it. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I believe this will be the last speaker of this evening. As last hand I see, Michael Leblanc. Michael, good evening again.
Thank you for letting me do this one last, it'll be very brief. I would just strongly urge that if the district is going to consider a zero tolerance policy, that they strongly investigate it. Many districts have moved away from zero tolerance policies regarding any kind of discipline because they've had very negative effects on certain groups. New York City, for example, where I happen to work in the school districts, they've moved toward restorative justice versus zero tolerance. And they've seen some improvement with discipline issues in New York City with restorative justice over zero tolerance.
Great, Michael, thank you. As I said, there was no one else to speak. I was then corrected. No, I don't see, take that back. Sandra, good evening.
Yeah, hi, sorry. I just want to make one quick remark, and I didn't want to make it where everybody was talking about the other issue. Very important issue. One important thing, Dr. Varley made a remark regarding the vaccine and the hope that it would allow us to have our children return to school. I do want to point out that none of these vaccines have been tested in any children over the age of 12. None of them have been approved for any children under the age of 17. So this is false hope that the vaccine will be soon approved for children. So the vaccine will not make the difference. We should really be very, very careful what we do. And I just wanted to express that.
Great, Sandra, thank you very much. I do not see anybody else wishing to address the board tonight. I'll pause for a couple of seconds to make sure that everybody who has wanted to be heard this evening has been heard. With that, I will pause. Are there any board members? Let me just make one final statement, and then I'll. If there are any board members who want to make any concluding comments, I do know it's late, but this is important before we close this evening. So I counted I counted 44 people who spoke tonight to address the board. 44 very courageous people, some very young adults. I think we had one middle school student, several high school students, many young adults who have graduated recently, anywhere from a year ago to 8 or 10 or more years ago. And the courage to speak in a public session like that is significant. I am, as I mentioned in my comments to David, I am alarmed and in some ways horrified at some of the things I've read over the last 96 hours and some of the things that I've heard tonight. I am encouraged because I've heard a number of suggestions on ways to improve everything from curriculum change to mental health, to hiring practices, to training, to culture. And again, as I shared, some short-term, some long-term. I am confident in Dr. Varley's leadership, in what she believes, in what's in her heart, what's in her soul, and what she wants to do to improve this district. A number of people obviously have commented that she's only been here for a year and a half. She doesn't look at it that way. She looks at it as that she is in charge. She is the CEO of this district, and she is accountable to improve everything that happens operationally in our schools. And this is a very important priority, A1 of that. It's something that the board feels strongly about. It's something that the board will feel accountable to. I think it was Chris's suggestion to keep this top of mind, to be talking about it at every meeting. We'll figure out a way to do that. A couple of people have suggested that we don't overreact and we think about how we want to do some of these programs. I think there's some value in that as well. I believe that the comments and the feedback and the listening we heard tonight was excellent, but we have to do more. Actions speak louder than words. Words are good. Words are a good starting point, but actions are where we need to go. So with that, I will pause if any board members want to make any brief comments before we close.
Yeah, I would actually like to make some comments after listening to everybody tonight. I'm not only a board member or a new board member, I'm a parent, but I was also PTO president for many, many years, and I didn't realize that a lot of this was going on at the schools. I was horrified and upset about a lot of the posts that I read. And as a result, I had a lot of discussion with my children about a lot of this over the weekend. We've listened to a lot of really good feedback tonight, and I think we need to take that into consideration. And although the district has put a lot of good programs into place, and we have a lot of training in place, I think we have a lot to do moving forward. So I just want to say, as a board member, I am committed to doing whatever needs to be done so that we can make a difference. And I'd also like to reiterate what Doug and Chris said, that I think we need to make this a priority to the board, and we do need to keep update with it and make their transparency and definitely make a commitment to it. So that's all I really need to say.
Thanks, Angela. Any other comments?
Doug, it's Jerry.
Hey, Jerry, good evening.
Hi. So as I exit the board, I have to say I'm confident with Dr. Varley, the administration, and our faculty and the board that now that this has really come to our awareness, it will be addressed. It's unfortunate that it had not come before, because I know the dedication of these people, and we would have definitely addressed it earlier, because our goal is to provide our students an exceptional experience here and prepare them for life. I do want to say, as we talk about, this person, that person, this happened, we really need to start looking at ourselves, because I don't believe that of the 500 people that were on tonight, including myself, there hasn't been a time that any of us have not engaged in behavior that would be hurtful to somebody, insulting, engaged in remarks that we thought were harmless, but hurt somebody else. So if this community really wants to make a change, it has to start with the individual person. Diversity committees are great, doing things at school are great, but if we don't own this, each of us, we're not going to change. And it's just going to be rhetoric that we're going to talk about forever. So I would just encourage not only myself, but everyone that participated tonight, look at yourself and see what you own on this. because it certainly is something that we all collectively have shared in. So that's my
Great. Great. Thanks, Jerry. Any other board members want to make a comment before we close?
Yeah, Doug, it's Mike. I'd like real quick, just want to say thank you to everyone that came out. This was also as a new board member, I have younger kids in the school. So this was, yeah, it's difficult to say. This is very eye-opening. And again, as a new board member, you have my commitment that we need to do something. We need to talk about this. We need to address this. We need to keep this conversation going. Like Toya said, we do need to make plans. We shouldn't be making knee-jerk reactions, and have truly smart, measurable, tangible goals of saying, what are we doing? How are we changing? But again, also looking at ourselves in the mirror and making sure we're doing the right things at home. So I thank, especially our youngest students that spoke up. I used to work at a university, and I swear I was listening to students that were juniors and seniors getting ready to enter the work life that are actually high school students. It's, again, was very inspiring listening to all of them, and we have a lot of work to do. That's all I got to say.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
So I'll just speak quick. I also have 3 teenage children. It is my last night on the board, or last week on the board. When I read the original post, I was pretty shocked and horrified. Tonight, I'm even more horrified. I think the fact that it's not just students that are perpetrating some of these behaviors is a really tough thing to hear. I do think the board has a lot of work ahead of it. I also am confident that they'll focus on it. I think from my perspective, over the years, I thought we were safe from these behaviors with the harassment and bullying work we did. Obviously, that wasn't enough. So I apologize for missing it. I never noticed it. It's not behavior that's tolerated in our family. So I wish everyone the best of luck moving this forward, and I'm confident Melissa will push that agenda forward. I'm confident in the board as well, but I apologize for those who were negatively impacted before we caught this.
Great. Thanks, Dante.
Okay, well, I'll go as well. This is obviously my probably my last night on the board, unless we do another one of these in a couple of days. But the looking through those comments, there are patterns, and I have no doubt that Dr. Varley has spotted all these patterns and are looking at the patterns. But but the themes of that much of this came from adults. The themes that there was a distrust of the system in terms of reporting it. The themes of feeling futile, that you couldn't, that there was a futility to acting on it. Those themes all, need to be addressed, need to be investigated, and really look, bullying is disquieting on any level, but the fact that so much of the discomfort comes from the behavior of the staff and the adults at the school is really the most concerning part of all of this.
Great, thanks, Bill. Anybody else?
I would like to say something. I have been a longtime board member and have to own some of this, of what has been going on in our schools. And we do, as a board, as an administration, have to move forward. Each child is important to us, and it is our responsibility to do our very best for each child in the school. So yes, I think you have the commitment tonight from every board member and every administrator on this call that we will move forward to make it better for all of our students all the time. Thank you. I applaud you for coming out. It took a lot of courage for many of you, and we did listen. So we will move forward in a positive way. Thank you.
Chris, if you wanted to speak, you're on mute.
Okay. I just want to reiterate what I said earlier to Jace, to everyone who spoke up tonight. I I saw you, I hear you, and your pain is my pain. And we clearly have a lot of work to do. And but right now, I think I'm just gonna have myself a good cry when this meeting is over, and then we need to get to work. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I'll make one final comment. It was brought up before that this is uncomfortable for the board to hear. There is no level of discomfort that is even one millionth of discomfort compared to the comments that were made tonight. So if anybody thinks that this is uncomfortable, it should be uncomfortable. It has to be uncomfortable. The people who experienced what was written about, that is a level of discomfort that is just not acceptable. So we should be uncomfortable listening to this tonight. Every board member, every administrator, every teacher who's heard this should be uncomfortable. With that, I'm going to end this meeting for this evening. We are obviously on the brink of starting a holiday season, probably like none ever before, given the year that we have. So I will take this opportunity to wish everyone a safe, a happy, a healthy, a small scale holiday in whatever way you are celebrating it with your families, and a new year. We can only hope that next year brings lots of change in many, many different dimensions. So I will adjourn this evening. Thank everybody for coming, and we will see everybody at our next meeting in January. Thank you and good night.
Happy holiday.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Happy holidays. Be safe.